This program features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Our leopard deer has just repositioned. Not the most ideal views, of course, she heard live, and it is in fact Princess Tlalamba. What else could we want? Let's just see if we can show you another rosette or two. But we will reposition in just a moment. Oh, there we go. Beautiful princess. And of course, that can only mean one thing. It's a very great start to your safari through the African bush. Welcome, everyone. She was sitting so perfectly and she's just moved. But of course, we do have Miss Tlalamba here. Not entirely sure we're going to be able to give you a view right now. But my name is Lauren. I do have Marcel on camera this morning. And Merry Christmas to those who celebrate. If you don't, just have a wonderful day with your family. You're very lucky to be around loved ones. You are my family for today. Okay, unfortunately, there's a vehicle in front of us and we don't have a view. Well, let me see how we can navigate around this. Okay, we might have to reverse and go around. Tlalamba, very, very typical. Okay, please do talk to us today. It is your live safari. Send in all your comments and questions. Your lovely one at FC on YouTube, hashtag WildEarth on Twitter, or you can, of course, go over to our website, WildEarth/Explorers. We are going to reposition for you and we're going to send you guys across to Ngala.
Beautiful. Good morning and a very Merry Christmas from all of us at andBeyond Ngala. And this morning we've found something quite special. So what you're looking at on screen is a white-headed vulture, one we don't often see here. Quite a beautiful vulture. I think it's probably one of my favorite vultures out here. So my name is MARNA. And with me on camera, as always, is BK. So I just quickly want to show you in the book, seeing as we can't see the colors too nicely, but if you have a look here, so you can see where the name comes from. Obviously, they've got a distinct white head, but also the bill is really beautiful. So it's got that blue at the base and then a red tip. And this is actually one of only two vultures we find in southern Africa that hunts for themselves. So this white-headed vulture and the leopard-faced, they don't just scavenge, they sometimes hunt for themselves. Actually, it looks like he has now disappeared. He flew off. All right, so our plan for the morning is to see if we can find a leopard. So we actually thought that we heard lions in the block here. That's probably why that vulture was here. We saw a few more of them just scattered around, but unfortunately we can't off-road this morning, so I'm going to let all the other vehicles know, see if they can drive the roads around this area. Maybe we get lucky with them, but in the meantime we're going to see if we can find any signs of a leopard. All right, I think let's go have a look. All right, we're going to send you off to Andrew at Djuma.
Good morning everybody, and Merry Christmas to everyone everywhere. welcome to Djuma Private Game Reserve. Here we looks like a following on a herd of elephants moving through the bush. And my name is Andrew. On camera I have Simon again this morning. Looks like they have a lot of strategies, a lot of energy as elephants. Since we got them, they never stop. They're moving through the wood. So we've been trying to follow them just to see how they move away from us. So the temperature for this morning is 21 degrees, 69 Fahrenheit. This is where we stand. I think it's pretty cloudy still. It doesn't look like or feel like it's going to rain. If it does, then maybe later on. Not surprised. Well, it's kind of this month of rain, December. So remember to talk to us on kids questions at WildEarth.tv, also on hashtag WildEarth, as well as at FC YouTube channel and WildEarth.tv/explorer. And this is how we're going to be taking you through this wilderness. We still got these elephants. I was actually thinking of moving forward, but it's so cool that they're all of them stationary, taking their own time. What we're seeing there is probably one of these. There's a young male there pushing them so much. It's probably over 20 years. I think it's the one that is actually showing off there. As you can see, all of the size difference. He's only the one that's appearing much higher compared to the rest. And then I'm sure they've actually been moving a lot at night, because they do that. They eat at night also during the day. Time for them to rest, as the elephant is so shorter. Maybe in an hour, maybe 45 minutes. This is where they think of maybe just take it easy. For the young one to rest. So I'm going to move forward. In the meantime, let me send you over to Tswalu for them to say hi to everyone.
Good morning and welcome to Tswalu in the heart of the Kalahari. We're currently at Chikulu Dam, just listening to some bird sounds as well as looking for some tracks. Our game plan for this morning is to follow up on bat-eared fox and hopefully find some tracks of cheetah in between the dunes. My name is JP LaRue, and behind the camera we've got Davi.
Hello.
So for the moment, if you would like to just enjoy the scenery and soak up the sounds, we're going to start a little bit of tracking around the dam, see where the tracks are going, and from there on make our way slightly further west. We're going to start making our way from here west into the dune system, see what we can go and find in terms of tracks. But in the meanwhile, we're handing you over to Lauren, who's currently sitting with a leopard.
Our Christmas cat is very busy, Miss Kalamba here. I think she is the culprit behind the kill that we found yesterday. And it's still untouched. I wonder if it's a Christmas present for Daddy? I'm not sure. But it's completely untouched. And the rather unfortunate thing right now, she is heading into a drainage. So we will need to take this very, very easy, especially after the rains. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I'm sure that Kalamba was my Christmas cat last year as well. I'm just going to let this other car go in front. And then, of course, there is no choice but to follow her. I just cannot believe that kill right next to camp. That little impala lamb is still hoisted and still completely untouched. Okay, one must move. I'm just going to let Aubrey go in front of us, everyone. There's a traffic jam here. Yeah, we've lost her for now, I'm afraid, everyone, and I just want to let the other vehicles go in front so they can all get a chance to view her. I think I'm blocking everybody's path. Ah, she walked right behind the car. It was so nice to see her again. It's been quite a few days without leopards, I'm afraid. They've been around, and it's just not been so easy to see them, especially with the weather that we've been experiencing. Hopefully she won't go too deep into this drainage. This drainage, unfortunately, is what one would call a nightmare. You're saying Kalamba with tree decorations. Yeah, she's decorating quarantine. I would not be surprised if Daddy rocked up. And in case any of you don't know who I'm referring to Tinganana. I really would not be surprised if he rocked up and went to that Impala. I think what happened is, again, speculation, but putting all the pieces together from the other guides out here, is she has multiple kills. Usual. That's Kalamba's style. She doesn't do anything in half measures. Oh no. No, she doesn't. And I think that's exactly why this last one is untouched. Can you see her, Marcel? She's over there, Marcella. Just gonna have to navigate this. She's walking straight west. Surf 50, absolutely, it's incredible. They're very camouflage. You just don't immediately think that because of the sort of fantastic patterns and coloration. You don't immediately think that it's camouflage. But it is, completely. Especially against the green vegetation of summer. You would think that they wouldn't blend in, but they absolutely do. They blend in winter as well. Do you see her, Marcel? I just need to figure out what the other vehicles are doing. I think we might get... this is not an easy sighting. Did I expect it to be with Kalamba? No. Excuse the other vehicle. Everyone's very happy to see leopards. This is the first leopard that's been spotted on Djuma in a large number of days. And of course, it's the one and only princess of Djuma, Kalamba. Kalamba, you cannot possibly be looking to kill. You have one. She's turned into such... Oh my goodness, look at that swollen tummy. She is full. I think she's definitely had another carcass. Leslie, I wouldn't say share. I don't know if that's the correct word. She tolerates him as daddy after all. And he used to be the most dominant male in the area. He appears not to be so anymore. He's gone very nomadic. And sorry, I'm just sign language with Aubrey here. But she still knows it's daddy. And she will absolutely tolerate him. She appears to just allow him to steal, and I think she's got so accustomed to it that it's almost an expectation. He's no threat to her, he's not aggressive towards her. What are you doing, dearest? And I don't think she likes it or enjoys it, but she tolerates it. And I don't think she's leaving carcasses for daddy, really. I think she's just completely... She's booming, she's growing, she's curious. She just wants to kill everything she sees. She's just a fine leopardess, honing in on those skills. Oh, is she going to go flat here? See how difficult it is for us to find leopards. Look at that. The grass is so long. And the more rains we get, the longer the grass is going to go. And I believe Andrew showed you Gowrie Dam yesterday during one of his segments. I showed you Treehouse Dam. The dams are full. So yes, she does very often lose her kills to Tingana, which is possibly the reason that she does kill multiple animals. Okay, not the best positioning, but we'll try and maneuver here, and hopefully we can spend the rest of the morning with our princess.
Welcome to my car. This is Wendy, and she's my favorite. She would love to have your name engraved on her so you can be with her every single time she goes on a safari here in Djuma. If you become a WildEarth explorer, you will have the opportunity to buy an engraved tag which we will attach to her. We will make sure to send you a digital picture to show you exactly where you are sitting on her. You will have front row seat in every single sighting.
My name is James Hendry, and I work here at Djuma Private Game Reserve in the Sabi sands on the western fringes of the Greater Kruger National Park. My favorite part of getting questions from viewers is that we get to have long and varied discussions about all sorts of different aspects of nature. Because our audience comes from all over the world, it's very special to have different perspectives from everywhere. If you want to submit a question on WildEarth, you need to register on our website. Once registered, go to the Live Safari page and submit your question beneath the live feed.
Hello everyone, my name is Trishala and I am a naturalist and safari guide here in Djuma Game Reserve in the Sabi Sands in South Africa. I think that the information that we provide, and most importantly the questions that you ask, give both you and I a really good idea of what's going on. My friend Fernando here, he's a flat-necked chameleon and I love them. They're just these gems that you manage to find in the bush.
Catch up with the guides daily here on WildEarth. Have you been watching WildEarth and dreamt of being right there on safari with one of the guides? Well, now you can. WildEarth is offering you a chance to buy a ticket to dream. You or a friend can hop on board a live WildEarth show and join our guide on safari. The ticket is redeemable at any of our locations, anytime in the future. Only a limited number of tickets are available, so don't wait. Get your ticket now and start dreaming. Terms and conditions apply.
Great, everyone. So we visited Gowrie Dam, decided to visit Gowrie Dam here just to see how the water's like, first things. But along on the other side there, you can see the yellow bull stock and the Egyptian geese. They're doing their best of searching for anything they could find, especially the stock, which you would search for frogs, fishes that is in this dam here. And all water birds, they are so happy having water so that they won't travel from one place to another, expecting this dam to be dry off maybe during the winter. I think if it's full enough, we're able to manage to hold water throughout the winter until the next season, the raining season. It's actually full there. Not properly, but it's not actually overflowing yet. But it's nearly there. So if we're going to have another rain, then it's going to be right overflowing. So beautiful sound this morning. Also the water thickening, they're also doing sound. I can only hear it, I cannot see them. All southern ground hornbill from way distance, a vocal like almost like cat or lion. So again this morning I'm going to spend time hoping to find a pride of line, possibly Talamati, and if it's that, then they probably still maybe in Bevelsoek. Somebody saw their tracks there, but it was not actually very difficult for everyone to follow up, and then it was soaking wet back there. And I'm not saying this morning it would dry, no, it's not having dried yet, but you know, we can manage to travel a few roads that we know it's dry enough for us to do so, and hopefully we find them. And nobody know what they will be doing anyway, because all I know, when it's pouring rain, Safari Kitty, indeed it is a lot of water here. I drove past here last night, but it was not clear enough for me. And now I can see, wow, it's a lot of water. It's plenty of water. And the hippo, they will return in this dam here. Now it's a one, but it's gone. Probably many of them, they will return back. Once they know there's a water, they will return back. They might switch from here to Bevelsoek Dam and maybe Treehouse Dam, because it's also, it looks like it's got a water so much as well from that rain we had. The morning sound is deadly quiet, only birds that you can hear. And, you know, every time I stop, I'm also keeping on an eye or listening to any audio of maybe lion or any of maybe impalas, alarm calling, or kudus, those type. Because sometimes they can indicate you if there is a danger or there is a cat near them. So you always respond to them and then check what they might see, and then you find what you're looking for. Usually when they're warning, it can sometimes for a python, anything that is danger to them. Fiona, not that I know for now, no crocodile here. But with this water, it's been increased much. Possible that, you know, croc can come from anywhere, far away here. So it didn't actually have enough water, or then once crocodile, they're one of these creatures that move, you know, quite often, change place to another. So there's one up in Kamanzi, and then I believe if that one move back here, either cross the Chitwa or stuck in one of the Bevelsoek Dam or come into this very waterhole that we're at right now. That wouldn't be surprised me. It's plenty of water if the croc found himself in this waterhole, or in hippo as well. And I'm going to look out for giant kingfishers and those pied kingfisher, because they mainly around where there's plenty of water and there's a lot of feed for them. Fishes will be so many. This dam has been holding water for quite some time, so definitely there is a fish, and This kingfisher will spend a lot of time here. I've seen some of these stocks. The only reason kept them here is benefit, so they get enough of what they need, which is fishes and those frogs. So it's definitely a fish, but not a crocodile, not yet. So Egyptian geese is also on a search for soft plants, new growth grasses. Pretty much vegetarian sometimes, quite a lot. So I see them out far from the water, eat plants and, shoots of flowers and things like that, herbs. So I'm going to carry on, do my check to the east. So I'm going to be sending you over to Tswalu with their giraffe.
Good morning and welcome back to Tswalu. We're just enjoying a sighting of a big giraffe bull in the distance, busy browsing on the trees. So the reason why we know that it's a giraffe bull, it's quite tall, it's very thick-necked, which is one of the other characteristics which we normally look at. And then if we also look at the coat pattern, in general, we find bulls to be much darker than females. However, one of the darkest giraffes I've actually ever seen was actually a female. So if you're still in doubt after looking at all those characteristics, you can just always look underneath the belly to make 100% sure. One of the interesting things that I find about giraffe bulls is that they don't really focus a lot on the quality of the food that they eat. They eat, they get full, and move on. Compared to the females, they tend to spend a lot more time looking for quality food, as that they know that they have to be in a good condition so that they can go into estrus. One of the most fascinating adaptations that giraffe has is when it comes to feeding, and that is to where they have a very special type of saliva that's on the tongue that basically deflect the thorns off the tongue from the acacias which they feed on. Another adaptation that they have is also an incredibly thick and leathery lip to protect them. And lastly, every lady's envy, those beautiful eyelashes, also serves the purpose of protecting the eyes against thorns. When we look at the neck that we have in the screen, it would seem that the giraffe would have way more neck vertebrae than that we have. But in reality, they actually have 7, just like we have. One of the other fascinating adaptations that they have is on the atlas and the axis vertebra, allowing it to tilt up at a 90-degree angle so they can have absolute maximum reach when feeding. And lastly, they've also got a 45-centimeter long tongue that they can extend and strip the leaves off the tip of the branches. Good morning, Laura. Yes, I do. It's a rather flat ossicones. So for those of you that are not sure what is an ossicone, those are the horn-like structures that the giraffe has on his head. And in the case of a male, these are often bald, compared to the female that has like little black paintbrush-like tips to her ossicones. Quite often when you see giraffe, they pause and then they swallow. And just like buffalo and antelope, they're also ruminants. They hold the record actually for being the largest ruminant. They also hold the record for being the ruminant with the longest gestation period. Just to give you an idea, females can carry up to 457 days. One of my favorite stories about a giraffe is actually about a giraffe that was sent as a diplomatic gift to China. It happened around somewhere in the 1400s or 1500s, and it was sent to it as a gift to the Chinese emperor. It's believed that this giraffe was shipped from Malindi in Kenya, and from there transported across the ocean to China. Good morning, Miss Sunshine. It's a little bit difficult to see from here, but I'm just currently looking through my binoculars, and it does look like a small camel fawn on which it's browsing. Every now and then we'll see, once he stops eating, then he'll look up and he will actually stare into the distance. Giraffes have got incredibly good eyesight, and it's believed that they can keep contact with one another on flat-grounded areas at distances of up to 3 kilometers. As guides, they're also incredibly useful for us, as they often will spot predators and stare at them in the distance, sometimes even coming closer. Quite often when we do conduct walks and we find giraffe close by on foot and they're not staring at us, we know that there's very likely a predator to be on the ground. A year or so ago, a tracker that I was working with and myself, we saw 3 giraffes that was busy staring at something. We were really excited, and we thought we had a leopard on the ground. Eventually, as we came closer and to the area to come and see what they're staring at, they were staring at 2 porcupines, which was also quite strange to find them being active in the early parts of the day, as porcupines are normally a nocturnal species. Good morning, Jerome. To answer your question, if they do make sounds, a lot of people in books will actually tell you they mute, but that's absolute nonsense. I've seen these guys bellowing very loudly when they're being attacked by lions, so they can make a call or a sound. And just to think of it, the time that I did see them bellowing like that, this giraffe was sadly brought down by 9 lions, of which one of those lions had a very bad kick from this male giraffe that they brought down. And eventually this young male lion died from the injuries from the kick that the giraffe gave him. Good morning, Daniel. Yeah, they do look quite even in this case. Sometimes they're off-center, and sometimes they're really off-center. It might just be a case that when they were very young, when those ossicones weren't fused, that they got bumped and repositioned. And sometimes in the case of the bulls, they also break when they fight. Or not break, but move off from position. Don't know if you've ever been fortunate enough to see them fighting, but fighting can become quite intense, where they will try and butt one another with their heads and try and push one another over by using neck slamming techniques that they use. or even trying to hit the side of a leg to trip up her opponent. I'm just going to move forward, but we can get a little bit of a better view. So quite often when they do fight and their heads do connect, you can actually hear it as a very loud thump. So while we're on the topic of male giraffes fighting, one of the interesting things that I do find is that the neck actually evolved to become incredibly long, because the longer your neck is, the more easier it is for you to push over an opponent. Fortunately for the giraffe, one of the benefits from it as well became that they could eat at a much higher level than many other herbivores can eat. We're going to leave a giraffe and from here on move on, and in the meanwhile we're handing you back to Ngala.
Alright, so from one giraffe to another. So the reason we stopped with this giraffe was because he was staring into one of these shrubs quite intently. So like you probably already know, giraffes rely on their vision for social reasons, but also for early detection of predators. So a lot of the times when there's a predator in the area and you see a giraffe just staring in that direction, it helps us find the predators as well. I think you were discussing the vocalizations with JP now, and if they see a predator, they don't really make any alarm calls like some of the other animals, like the wildebeests or the impalas. They just stare. Obviously they have that height advantage, so they can look right into these shrubs. He's still staring, and whilst doing that he's also ruminating. You can see he's chewing. Now you might see when he swallows, you might see that ball of food going down his neck. Let's see if we can follow it down. Still chewing. There it goes. Now watch, sometimes you can see it coming back up. Watch that neck closely. There it goes. And the cheeks are full again. Continue eating that. Oh, okay, he's lost interest in whatever he was staring at for quite a long time this side. I don't know if you noticed those little oxpeckers also bouncing around on his head, and there was one on his neck as well. And also notice how dark this giraffe is. So it's an adult bull, an older male. Oh, he's still looking into that bush. We've tried to see if we could see what's going on there. We've been scanning with the binoculars, but we couldn't see anything. We are actually in that area where they spotted a young male leopard yesterday. It was a brief sighting, but he was around this area. So I'm thinking, maybe he's around here. Maybe he's just under one of those quarry bushes watching the giraffe. Ambitious, but anything that moves, he'll sit and watch. And if he is there, the giraffe probably knows he's of no concern to him, but he'll still keep an eye on him. And he looks up at the tree, and it's almost like he wants to start feeding, but then he looks back at the at that bush again. Lover, which family giraffes belong to? As far as I know, the only relative is the okapi, which is an animal you find in Central West Africa. And yeah, quite a bizarre looking creature. They are beautiful though, but it's almost like it's a cross between a zebra and a giraffe. So pretty much the head of the giraffe, so the horns kind of look the same, or the ossicones, and then they've got stripes on their rear ends. A lot shorter than, but a really beautiful animal. Let's go Google it. Talking about those ossicones, so those little horns on the head, you can clearly see that this is a male looking at the horn. Now from the back especially, it's quite clear. You'll notice that there's no hair on the tips of the horns, because these males fight, so they lose the hair on the horns. Not a horn lying like a buffalo or one of the antelopes. It's just bone covered in skin. A buffalo's horn, for instance, would be bone covered in a keratin sleeve or sheath. Right, I'm going to spend a little bit more time here just to see if something doesn't pop out of the bushes. Maybe that leopard is around, and we're going to send you off to someone else.
Well, that was quite the mission. Miss Kalamba has gone deep into the drainage, and it's the drainage south of quarantine that goes along Rebecca's road, and it's not possible for any of the cars to get in there. So there's 3 vehicles working the area. We'll do our best. I'm convinced at some point she's going to go to that carcass. She has to. Someone's going to go to it at some point. So I think we're just going to stay in the area, keep working the area, keep checking the carcass, and I can see some elephants way off in the distance, so we're going to go and visit them. I'd also like to say Merry Christmas to the Djuma clan, but for now we've completely lost Kalamba. They do not make it easy. In winter, there's a chance we could have maybe kept up with her for longer, but not with the summer that we are having right now. I believe Sabi was responsible for the other carcasses, or at least her and her 2 cubs. And yes, of course, Tandy's still around, but she's spending a lot more of her time on Torchwood, and we are really struggling to get signal over on Torchwood, I'm afraid. Tandy and her cubs seem to frequent First Rock almost daily. She spends a lot of time with her cub now, her son, and yes, she's not crossed into Djuma in the short time that I've been here. Torchwood seems to be the place for them, especially First Rock. Kuchava's also spending a lot of her time on Torchwood. I think Tristan managed to have a wonderful sighting with them both. But yeah, she's still around, absolutely. It's just due to the weather and the nature of the vegetation right now, it always becomes tricky. We always go through a period in summer where we just don't tend to spot any leopards. And then, of course, we spot them again. And once you start to know where they all are, it's easy to find them. But when you come in with a blank slate, it's very tricky to spot them all. But I'm sure Kalamba will appear again, do not worry. She's teasing us, our Christmas leopard. Okay, we're going to go around to these elephants and just keep working, and at some point she's going to pop out. One hopes. to just turn that one up, Marcel, just the tiniest amount. I didn't catch that. No, Sabui was responsible. Gowrie, really not far from where we saw the kills. And she's with her 2 cubs, Shasha and Langa, and they're on another kill. And word of mouth said that they were responsible. Not sure about the ewe that was on the ground, the Impala ewe from yesterday, but I heard that Sabui or one of her cubs was responsible for the Impala lamb. There's other people checking the area there right now, but she's still very much deep in Little Gowrie, so there's no chance that we can view her, I'm afraid. I really don't know who was responsible or who was behind that large and female that was lying on the ground. I really don't know. I did see some elephants, I promise. Did you see them, Marcel? Okay. I'm not going crazy. Good morning, Impala. Merry Christmas. Both. Leopards are sort of considered arboreal, so they spend a large portion of their life and their time in trees. They're adapted to that. I think it's a lone bull we've got here. They have unique specializations to allow them the life in trees. Huge scapula. Your scapula is your shoulder bone that you can sort of see when you move your shoulder. And it's got lots of special, unique muscle attachment sites to allow them to be able to grab onto trees with their sharp claws and pull themselves up. Not only do they pull themselves up, they've normally got a carcass in their mouth. So they're extremely powerful and they have adaptations for life in the trees. So I've noticed it's quite personality dependent as well. There's some leopards that just enjoy life in the trees, sleeping in the trees, being in the branches. Shadulu's one of them. And there's some leopards that just like to be on the ground, prefer to be on the ground. But either or, they will sleep in trees, especially when there's a carcass, and they will also sleep on the ground. Depends on weather, depends on where they are. Lots of factors. To be on the ground, prefer to be on the ground. But either or, they will sleep in trees, especially when there's a carcass, and they will also sleep on the ground. Depends on weather, depends on where they are. Moving very fast at the start of drive, or before drive. And now there's a lone bull in the middle of quarantine. And this is actually perfect, the fact that he's in the middle of quarantine, because it allows us to constantly scan around for Miss Tlalamba too. Listen to the constant shrill of the woodlands. Having his breakfast for the day. Grass will make up the bulk of their diet right now. You find in summer, they will still sort of debark or ring bark trees, but not so much because there's so much choice around right now. The vegetation is just full. It's lush, it's thick. There's so much choice. So their diet will become more varied. And they'll do a little bit less damage, shall we say, to the trunks of trees. They're very relaxed bull. I also don't see any signs of that temporary madness that goes under the name of must. He's an older bull. You can tell by the shape of his body, his size, the shape of his skull. Okay, I'm going to try and stay with this bull a little bit longer and keep a lookout for Tlalamba, but for now, you guys are going to pop over to Tswalu.
Good morning and welcome back again to Tswalu. I'm going to be quite soft in my voice at the moment, as I don't want to disturb these little bat-eared foxes. So this is the adult that's sitting over there, and there's also some tiny little pups that you can just see hiding behind the vegetation. So one of the things that we'll notice with these bat-eared foxes is that they've got incredibly large ears, almost making them look like Yoda. So these ears also play a very important role in terms of detecting insects. So quite often when you do see them walking, their heads is quite low down to the ground, with their ears cupped to the ground. And what they're basically listening for is the sounds that are created by subterranean insects, which they will then dig out and feed on. Quite often when there's large eruptions of moths, as what I've seen in the past, in the Kalahari, these guys will feast on them. They also go for termites. When it comes to mammals, we actually find very few animals that are monogamous, which means that they mate either for life or for several seasons. It's a characteristic which is more typical with birds. However, the bat-eared fox is one of the exceptions, and we see that they do form pairs, which sticks together. Oh, beautiful. There's a pup. This has really put a smile on my day. This is one of my favorite small mammals in terms of dogs. And hopefully we'll get you another one of my favorite dogs, and that's a Cape Fox. I'm trying to see how many pups there are at the moment. It looked like 2, but they can have up to 5. Now you can see how big those ears are. Good morning, Arnold. The Cape Fox is still slightly smaller than that they are. Just to give you an idea, when it comes to the bat-eared foxes, they can weigh up to 5 kilograms, where Cape Fox is more typically around by 3 to 4 kilograms in weight. And they appear a little bit more slender than the bat-eared foxes are. So we actually nickname them quite often fat-eared boxers because of their shape and because they look so chunky, and that appearance just makes them look a little bit bigger than the Cape Fox is, although the Cape Fox is still lighter in weight, as mentioned. Seems as if we've just lost him. Something spooked him. So we'll just keep our eyes open. Hopefully they'll come back. But in general, it's quite tough to actually get to view bat-eared foxes. They're very alert, very focused, and very skittish. In general, if we come close to them, they immediately will start running. Good morning, Anna-Marie. I think you're right. It's probably what makes them such interesting animals and just adds to the next level of cuteness. We're just going to sit here for a little bit longer. Hopefully the pup will come out again.
Great, so we're still checking here. Now we're checking the eastern boundary where there is no sign of a cat coming into Djuma or out of here. And we've got an audio of lions calling from very far south. So we're going to end up checking there or see if we can communicate to the guys from the west, because then it sounded like two male were calling in there. So it happens maybe to two of a Voka or I think so. Since, Duck Man was seen up in Beulishoek. If he hasn't returned back south, then they will probably maybe trying to communicate with him and hooked up again. So I know these two of Avoka, the other one, they haven't been in the area for quite some time. It's because maybe they spend a lot of time with the Nkohumas, and while the duck man is with his bride, Dalamati, in this side here. So we found out. Never know, maybe they're close to the border or there's a sighting happening there that we don't know of. So we're going to check it out. But it's so important just to know what is across the border, what not, so that you know for sure that you don't wander around and you're missing out all of the action happening in the property. So we now know that no lines that came in from the north or from the east to the west. So let's try, see if there is any chance we can get a sighting of them.
So we've just arrived at the den, I'm afraid, and no one is home. So of course that means we're just going to reverse right out of here. Merry Christmas, y'all. They'll be inside tucked up having a nice sleep in. There we go. It's not easy to reverse out of here. Okay. Good question. I would love to know the answer myself. There's one active one. And the Djuma clan last year changed dens at this stage with older cubs a lot more often than what they are doing right now. It's normal for them to change for hygiene reasons, safety reasons. The den can become very overloaded with parasites and they'll just decide to move. Let it dry out, let it air out. But they've stayed in this one a particularly long time, I feel, especially with the number and age groups of cubs. I always just check this second one, just in case there's any sign of intima. But there's nothing. So yes, there's only one active one, but they have a network of mound, if you like, that they tend to use. So we know of quite a few of them. One has collapsed, so I don't believe, actually two have collapsed, so I don't believe they'll be using those dens again, I'm afraid. But I'm sure there's more we don't know about. Absolutely sure. There's some that we just don't know about. They could be deep in the middle of a block and we've just never seen them use that one. But they're creatures of habit, I like to say. And these dens, the Philemon's 3, are particular favourites with the Djuma clan, which is perfect for us. It's not far from camp, and it's just really easy to access, easy to spend time there. There's sort of a parking bay. We don't just park anywhere at the dens. We are told exactly where to park. There's sort of 3 different spots to allow 3 different vehicles. And yes, it's just a perfect viewing dens. So I'm going to stay in the area, just start to do wider loops. And as I do that, we're going to send you across to Phinda to say good morning.
Good morning, and Merry Christmas to everyone. As you can see, we have got a beautiful female giraffe this morning, giving us a bit of a show. My name is Kim, and behind the camera we have Owen, and we are going to be with you this morning. So, it's been raining a little bit here at andBeyond Phinda Private Game Reserve. So that's why we've been a little bit late coming out this morning, but luckily the rain has cleared. We've come across this journey of giraffe, or actually at the moment I suppose it's a tower of giraffe because they're all remaining a bit still, right outside our game lodge. As you can see, this female is just busy ruminating at the moment. We just watch. There we go. Hope you all saw that. She just regurgitated a little ball of cud that went right up to her mouth, and she's going to chew it into a finer powder and then probably swallow it down again. She's been playing hide and seek with us the last few minutes. She keeps going behind that bush, out in the front and behind it again. Almost as if she's a little camera shy. I just want to give it a little bit of time, see if she walks out in front of us. Wesley, thank you very much for your question. It's actually the same way that elephants communicate. They've got a low frequency communication that we don't hear. So we originally thought that giraffes were completely silent, but it does seem that they have quite an ample communication and can hear each other over quite a distance. And so they can be communicating right now, this whole group of giraffe, and we wouldn't be able to hear or know a thing. Now, I used to think that there was quite a few species that would be able to communicate in this way, or maybe even pick up this frequency. You often see giraffe, here we go, she's walking out. Giraffe around zebra. And I used to think that the zebra would pick up on the frequency because there would be a lot of times when the giraffe would notice a predator and the zebra would suddenly become alert, aware of that predator, even though they had no sort of sign of the predator for themselves. Until the one time I saw a lion that was perfectly positioned, zebra walking right towards it. Lion was downwind from the animals, was completely covered, and they had no idea they were walking right into an ambush. And the giraffe had spotted it for quite a while before that. It was only when the zebra actually got sight of the giraffe that they managed to sort of get an idea that there was a predator, and then changed their behavior quite quickly. So I think they read the zebra's body language. Often giraffe are quite a good indication of a predator in the area. What you look for is when they stop and they stare and they get their ears right out wide, staring at a predator, we know that they've seen something. So we actually use it as one of the signs in the bush when we're looking for, any of our cats. Because if the giraffes stand very still, they won't be ruminating at the time, they'll just be staring. We know that there's a predator in the area. I'm just going to go forward because there's quite an interesting little nest that I want to show you. We got that foam nest frog nest on our left. Which is actually a very interesting nest. Now, you'll notice that there's a puddle of water just below it. And these will suddenly come out after the rains. And these foam nest frogs are very clever. The male whips his semen into this sort of foamy nest as the female, as he's busy mating and fertilizing the eggs of the female, and she will lay her eggs in that. And they will sit on a branch just above a watering hole, or sometimes even a small puddle of water. And the eggs will take 4 to 6 days to hatch and then fall down from that height into the water below. Now, the benefit of this is that there's nothing in the water that's going to feed on those eggs. So much higher survival of the egg stage. The drawback is if they choose too small a puddle that dries up within those days, then the tadpoles fall into, just a patch of dry ground, which is not something that they can use to survive. Luckily, I think this particular foam nest frog has picked a really interesting or large enough puddles, and it's very much in the low-lying areas here, so I don't think it's going to dry up anytime soon. So they seem to have picked quite a good spot. And even as I said, I'm looking around. Even as I said, I'm looking around and I see like a little bit of activity in this water, so I can see that there probably are some tadpoles here and already, so maybe they've already hatched from this nest. Tri-state, it is a big nest, and it's such a tiny little frog as well. And sometimes you'll see them on the branches very close to these nests, but they blend in beautifully. They go anywhere from like a pale white to a light grey to even some sort of lighter shades of brown. So very well could be on one of those branches close by. You hear the birds going mad this morning. Always sound like after the rain, the bush starts to celebrate. You can hear that one that's almost like a water hitting an electric fence. That's the greenback Cameroptera. And then we've got the crested barbet. That's that one that. NGN, they've got these little suction pads on the bottom of their feet that are very, very sticky and enable them to climb, completely vertically up structures and even hold on from upside down. Sort of, if you can, I don't know, it's kind of like the way Spider-Man does it, I suppose. Just like really sticky pads on the feet that suction onto things. It's quite an incredible adaptation, one that can be really useful, I'm sure, especially when you think about these areas that they need to sort of make their nests. If we have a look at that foam nest, we think about it, those frogs must have been upside down when they made that nest. There's even another one on the left-hand side, so 2 of them have decided this is a good spot to lay their eggs and to make their nest. Just having a really good scan on these branches, seeing if I can maybe find any sign of the frogs themselves. As I say, they are really camouflaged. Incredibly hard to spot. I'm sure you've all been hearing a lot of frog activity in areas where there's a lot of rain. And this is exactly why, this is the good time for them to actually mate. And so those very loud frog calls are the males trying to attract a mate towards them. And it's because right now there's ample condition for them to actually lay their eggs, and a lot of water for the tadpoles to live in. So what we're going to do is we're going to just take a very casual drive this morning. Drive around, see if there's any signs of animal activity around. Focus maybe on the smaller things. Look for some rhino and some of our grazers in the area. And we are going to send you over to Tswalu, back to the bat-eared foxes for now.
Welcome back again to Tswalu. We're still sitting with the bat-eared fox, and we can just see some ears sticking out behind that elephant, the eland's bean that they're hiding behind. So just to the left of where the adult is, there's a entrance to a den where the pups are hiding. So the reasons these dens are often old, just used aardvark burrows, or sometimes they'll also even create their own little spaces where they will dig out a den. But this one looks more like, if it's been an aardvark, it's a fairly big burrow. So it both provides protection to the pups when the adults are out foraging at night. And then secondly, also it protects the animals against heat extremes in the heat of the day. Those burrows will be some 14 degrees cooler underground than that the surface temperatures will be. One of the fascinating things that I find with two of the fox species that we find in the Kalahari, the bat-eared fox as well as the Cape fox, is that they're actually very playful animals. And we see even that play is often used by adults, seemingly to strengthen a pair bond. And play is not very typical of adults. It's normally something that we see in young animals, which is there to develop adult skills and to become physically stronger. But it's also almost always done in a very deliberate action so that the adults know that they are not being serious. Good morning, Claire. It's just to answer your question on how big the clan can get. Roughly, it's normally a group that consists out of a mated pair, which is the adults, and then the associated young. And that number of young can range between 2 and 6. So to safely make a guess, I would say 8 animals. One of the behaviors that we often notice with many of the dog species like jackals and foxes is that the young will stay with the parents for a prolonged period of time, and then thereafter they will break away from the parents and go and seek their own areas or territories. From here we're handing over to Phinda again.
So our giraffe continued to be quite camera shy. We came around the corner and they gave us such a beautiful display, and then the second we said, okay, cool, let's see if we can show our viewers. They just decided to try and hide behind the bush. At least this one seems to be playing ball with us a little bit. He seems a bit more bold than the female we saw earlier. As you can see, he's got those thick ossicones on the top, with almost like a buzz cut kind of feel. So that's a young male. The reason I say young is he's not quite as tall as the females, and the males tend to be a little bit taller. And it seems that they're having a little bit of a Christmas party with the zebra on the left there, all indulging in some leaves, and the zebra's feeding really nicely on the grass this morning. It's quite a stunning scene. If you can see, all these African weeping wattles are starting to flower. So it's a really beautiful morning. Very, very peaceful. You can see that grinding motion that male giraffe is busy doing. So again, we've spoken a bit about ruminating. You can see that they're very specialized to grind down the matter to a very, very fine powder. They tend to favor one side, just as humans do, chew more on the one side. And they only have molars, the same number of teeth as humans, 32. Most animals actually will have 32 teeth. And they grind it down to a very, very fine powder. That's why you can always see with the ruminants, when you look at their dung, you'll find that it's that, you break it open, it's that very fine powder, as opposed to, hindgut fermenter, like that zebra there. Zebra's the hindgut fermenter, and they'll have much coarse material in their dung, as it's not as effective digestive system. In fact, that's why you see the zebras, all the hindgut fermenters generally tend to be a bit bigger animals, especially around their stomachs. And it's not because they get fat or anything. It's just because they have very large intestines, because it's quite a quick digestion process. The matter will go through their system, they'll quickly absorb what they can, and it will come out. And also methane is a large byproduct of that process. So that's why often when zebra run away or get a fright, you can hear them farting. It's the methane coming out, and why they seem bloated all the time. It's a really good example of this. I've just seen some of this ruminants down here, and I want to just show you. If we break it open here, you just see that very. In fact, this is actually scrub hair dung. So now that I'm looking at it, you can see it's very, very small. Oh, it's actually quite difficult to show you there. You can just see all that little organic matter that it's been feeding on. So they're actually not ruminants, so that's why it's not into quite a fine powder yet. You can still see the more coarse material there. But nonetheless, quite nice to see. They've got tiny little droplets of dung, tiny little balls. You won't see, not very big at all. Oh, we've got another giraffe that's busy staring at us, poking his head around the bush there, around the tree. Amazing to see them all ruminating at this time. Normally, earlier on in the day, they'll spend the morning hours actually feeding properly, sitting outside and browsing, because it's much easier to feed when it's a bit cooler, as opposed to the heat of the day, which they'll spend ruminating. Oh, look, if we have a look on the left there, there's a male that's busy checking a female for estrus. You can just scan off to the left. You can see right there, he's just lowered his head and put it behind her tail. Miss Sunshine, gentle dance indeed. They are quite funny animals. You can see he's doing it again, and she's actually allowing him. So she might be an estrus, because it is their, they are driven to mate. So what he's doing is, when they check for estrus, they do this thing called a Fleming grimace. So he will go down below her tail and try and taste her urine, or pull the scent of her urine onto this thing called the Jacobson's organ, which is just behind the palate. And that will process the information from that urine scent right up to his brain and tell him if she's an estrus or not. That's what he's doing at the moment. What you might,
And that's what they do when they're trying to pull that scent onto the Jacobson's organ. He doesn't seem to have found any sign of Easter. Oh no, he's checking again. I think she might not have enough urine for him to properly do that phlegm and grimace at the moment. You know, normally as the male lowers his head, what the female will do, she will actually urinate. And then he can do a phlegm and grimace properly. Quite an interesting way for animals to communicate, but there's a variety of them that do it that way. Nikki, thank you for your question. I have not been lucky enough to see giraffes mating. I've seen them very close. I've seen a male try and mount a female, and what was is you can actually see these streams of semen coming. It almost looks like little cobwebs. So it's quite an interesting thing to witness. Also, you can imagine how, accurate the male has to be. He tries to mount the female from behind, which in alone itself, and then he's got to make sure that his aim is pretty much on point. So it can be quite an interesting process, and it takes them a very long time to actually get it right, and often the female will lose interest. Make sure that his aim is true. Interesting Christmas conversation here that we're having. But yeah, so it is one of the things that I would really, really like to see. Quite rare to actually see it successful. Right, so we're going to leave these giraffes. We're going to see how long we can stay out for. It's starting to drizzle again here, so we that the weather stays true and holds up. But in the meantime, we're going to send you over to Tswalu.
Welcome back to Tswalu. We're still sitting with the bat-eared fox, and just as we thought that the sighting was totally deteriorating, they popped their heads up again. It's not often easy to actually view bat-eared fox, as they normally run off on the sight of a vehicle coming closer. What we also quite often find is when they do hide from you, they lie flat down to prevent that the ears break the outline of their body, so making them less visible to you or a potential predator. And they normally sit quite tight right until the last moment, until you're almost on top of them. And then generally, if they're in a group, they tend to scatter in different directions. And then it seems if they almost always then regroup immediately and run off in the same direction. A very similar strategy that impala quite often follow is by first scattering on the approach of the predator and then immediately regrouping again. By immediately scattering, it obviously has a function of confusing the predator and choosing which animal to target. And then by regrouping, it obviously makes it slightly more difficult to choose an individual if you are sticking quite close by to one another. In general, when animals are fleeing away from predators, it's
on the junction of Central and Final Cut Line.
Are we live? Oh my goodness, lots of voices. Sorry. I was listening to the Game Drive radio there. Apologies. I don't know where you just came. Look at the size of that. Is that a... My goodness, I know you've just been discussing the foam nest, but this one is new. It's amazing when you're driving and you start to see all the new ones pop up, and this one is huge. And it's not in a great position. It's not high. Wow. I'm not sure I've ever seen this before, but this nest is just lying on the ground. There's a chance it might not be successful. whereas the ones up the tree most likely will be successful. I just can't believe the size of that one. It could actually be multiple females that have created that together. Now, just an update, we've done loop after loop after loop. I'm going to go back past that carcass one more time and then venture on and see what else we can find. I just can't believe the size of that foam nest here. Kalamba will pop back out at some point, she will. But she's got that Tandy gene, and she doesn't want to be seen. She will not be seen. One thing about summer is you have to be very, very careful going through puddles. You can't race through them. There's lots of organisms that will utilize that puddles, from insects to, of course, frogs and your terrapins. So if you are going through a puddle because there's no choice, you have to be really, really slow to give the animals that are ahead of you time to move out the way. So basically what I'm trying to say is, in summer you can't really get anywhere fast. You see the woodland kingfisher up there, Marcello? A quiet woodlands kingfisher. I think it's just had a bath. Now, when they call using that special bird voice box that's known as the larynx, it's exhausting. It takes up a lot of their energy. It's not easy to constantly call, constantly display, constantly advertise yourself for females. All of this eats into the energy budget, and that's exactly why they must eat. That's exactly why they're here in summer. To make sure they're stocked up, they're fed well, and they've got lots of energy so that they can spend it on calling, advertising, displaying. But this one's remarkably silent. Stuck in bed, no popcorn, I'm afraid. I haven't had the pleasure of that scent filling my nostrils in quite some time. I feel there's a bit of an absence of movement of leopards on Djuma right now. In the west, it's raining leopards there. Raining them on a daily basis. But in Djuma, there's a bit of a shift. Of course, Klalamba's here now, right in the heart of it, on quarantine. But other than that, there's been no sign of Shidulu. She was mating about a week ago on Arathusa with Hukamure. But other than that, there's really not much. The Tandy's crossed over. I don't think Tingana's been here in the past week. There's just a real absence of leopards on Djuma. And this happens. Djuma's a very small property. So, of course, animals come in and animals come out. Okay, I'm going to do one more look past that carcass and then decide exactly what I'm going to do.
An ever-increasing part of the global population is losing its connection with nature. WildEarth is here to reduce people's stress and anxiety, allowing you to escape into nature even just for a few hours a day. However, WildEarth is expensive to run, and we need help from you to keep this ship going. WildEarth Explorers gives you the opportunity to be a part of a program that supports the sharing of nature with the world.
Jumbo, my name is Isaac Rotich. I come live to you every day from the Mara Triangle in Kenya, East Africa. I think the most underrated animal here where we are is the spotted hyena. And the main reason is people haven't read any literature to fully understand about this super predator.
Catch up with the guides daily here on WildEarth. WildEarth is launching our brand new Explorer program with an opportunity to win a very special WildEarth expedition. The lucky winner will get a behind-the-scenes WildEarth experience at the magnificent and beyond Ngala Tainted Safari Camp. The prize includes a 3-night stay for you and a friend with a chance to sleep out in the unique Ngala treehouse. Become a WildEarth Explorer and stand a chance to win this and many other prizes. Terms and conditions apply.
You are cheeky. That was a brave decision. Amber Eyes is... Oh. That is so magic. That was absolutely wonderful. Amber Eyes just gave that cub an enormous hug.
Expect the unexpected here on WildEarth daily.
Welcome back to Tswalu. We're still sitting with the bat-eared foxes. We're still hoping that the pups are going to come out and we can show them to you one last time. So one of the adults has just moved a little bit more in the open, providing us with a little bit of a better view. Just before we lost signal, we just mentioned how quite often they will lie flat down and that they will stay in that position almost until the last moment that you're right on top of them, and then the group will scatter and run off into different directions and immediately regroup and then run off together. We're also very happy to spend time with them because it's quite exceptional for us to actually get them to be so still. And as mentioned earlier, they just generally run off as soon as you get close to them. It is actually one of the more difficult animals to photograph as well, for that specific reason. It's definitely something that we will return to over the next few days, see if we can follow up with them again in the early parts of the morning, and hopefully we'll be able to get another view of those cute little pups. Good morning, Brenda. To answer your question on if a population is healthy, I would say yes, because they are quite a common species. However, not easy to view. We also often find their tracks on the side of the roads, as well as when we walk through big areas of open sandy soil. So there's always signs of them, and it's not, as mentioned, it's just a case that you don't always get lucky to actually see them as they run off, or lie very flat and you miss them when you drive past them. Yes, they are mostly nocturnal. However, we do find them active in the early mornings, especially if it's cool. And then with most animals that are found in the Kalahari, such as African pangolin, they do become day active as well, because in the winter months, because of the food that they choose, such as termites, become more active in the day compared to the summer months where termites only become active at night time and during the coolest parts of the night as well. Just to give you an idea, with bat-eared foxes, they also do take a wide range of insect prey. That includes termites, it includes a lot of beetles as well, and then a very small amount of other prey items such as scorpions and solifuges has also been recorded. As mentioned earlier, with eruptions, they also feed on moths. Was a year ago, there was a moth eruption when I was here, and it was just thousands and thousands and thousands of moths for a few days. You could not believe the lights on. As you were driving, it was like driving through a cloud of moths, and these guys were simply enjoying every moment of that. And it's almost like if they were so distracted, but we could successfully view them because of all these moths were distracting them, and they were just continuously feeding, using that opportunity of availability of that food source. And as mentioned, 4 days later, 5 days later, there was not almost a moth left in this area. Oh, cute. There's the ears up again. It seems that they're starting to become tired now as the heat increases. It's also very likely that this adult is going to go down the burrow soon to also enjoy the shade. But
Welcome back to Ngala. So last time you were with us, we were looking at that giraffe that was staring into the bush, and we thought maybe there was a leopard somewhere there. We spent a little bit more time there, but we didn't see anything, so we decided to move on. Went past a large waterhole, nothing around there. And now we're just doing a loop back around to the riverbed just to see if we can find any other tracks or signs of a leopard. We're in the western parts of the reserve, somewhere we don't drive too often. The signal's sometimes a bit patchy here. It seems to be working this morning, which is good. And a few large trees here. We don't find leopard in this specific area too often. That's why we're trying to get down to the river, where it's nice and thick and lots of large trees. The leopards do like that area because it's They like hunting in the thicker areas where they can stay concealed, and also having large trees around that they can hoist their carcasses. In this area we've got a lot of hyenas, so if they don't get it up a tree quickly, the hyenas tend to steal it from them. Jeff's asking how's the leopard population in Ngala. Jeff, we've got quite a healthy population of leopards here. I wouldn't say, some of them, we see them and they run, so they're not all relaxed or used to seeing vehicles. But yeah, we've got a significant amount of leopards that we can view, and that are relaxed when we go in after them with the vehicle. But then also, especially in the northern parts and the Mopani woodland, we see leopard quite often, surprisingly, and they all run from us, as soon as they run. And then in the southern parts, same thing. We often find leopards there that are unrelaxed. So if we had to find a leopard here, chances are that it might not be too relaxed. But what we sometimes see is that, say we find a carcass in a tree or somewhere, then they might stick around for a little bit longer. You also don't want to chase them away, going in after that and a leopard comes down and runs away. So we'd like to leave them undisturbed. But that is that's like a golden ticket, when you find an impala or any carcass in a tree, then the animal is going to come back. So if it's a leopard, it's going to be around there somewhere. And sometimes at night, these unrelaxed animals they're more relaxed with us being around. So if we know it's an animal that we haven't viewed before or that's not used to the vehicles, at night, if you keep your distance and you go sit there for a bit, you sometimes will see them go back up the tree to start feeding. But it's a nice cool morning here. It's overcast, which is good. It means the predators might stay active for a bit longer. Lee's asking if insects are more active after heavy rain. Lee, they are indeed, especially those alates, the flying termites, and I'm sure you might have seen it on the show. Once we've had a lot of rain, those termite mounds erupt, and you'll just see insects everywhere. Now that's also why you have all these migratory birds here at this time of year. There is a lot of food, a lot of insects. So that's what they'd be going for. And the nice thing is that once all those insects start coming out, you'll see the birds, but you'll also see scorpions, you'll see snakes, you'll see frogs, all of these other little creatures taking advantage of the insects that are everywhere. And of course, that for us, that's also really amazing because we get to see quite a few different species. There's a lot of diversity. The bush just bursts to life, or bursts into life. I really like that. Even though this time of year it might be slightly harder finding animals, there's just so much more happening on a macro scale or micro scale. I'm really hoping that we can find a leopard this morning. It's BK's favorite animal as well, so hopefully we can find a little Christmas leopard. So the one we were looking for this morning was a young male. But we're going to go past an area in the riverbed where there's a female with 2 young cubs. Well, that's part of her territory. So we'll see if she's around, or maybe there are any signs or tracks of her. Oh, be really nice. Lots of birds out this morning. We've been seeing lots of parrots, brown-headed parrots flying around. But it's so hard getting them on camera because once you just look at them and they fly. But they've been all over them. You can see the road's very wet from all the rain we've had recently. All right, we're going to continue driving and we'll see what Andrew has for you.
Good idea, Marna. Roads are wet, especially just after the rain. What we now seen here, we're on Treehouse Dam right now. And it's such amazing to see how full it is. And this is only just the eastern end of the dam where there's a dam wall, but you already see the outlet. The water is flowing out of the water. It means it's still pushing from the stream because many of these water holes, they're made from the stream. So they block the streamline and build such a massive dam wall and a compressor soil that doesn't actually get washed off. So doing that, it's always an idea of making a little bit of a outlet in case it's overfull. So this is what is happening here. There is actually an outlet. So we're going to go to the dam wall there. We're going to see the western sector of this dam, what it is like. So it's so important. I mean, we had a rain and so many of these water holes, they held water for quite some time. For all winter, it's going to be water around here for all animals just to sustain and carry on with their lives. So we're on a dam wall. What you're hearing on the background again, that's a water thickening on the far edge of this water holes. Remember, this is where we often see one hippo where I've been driving past here quite often and he's probably moved out of here. There was one that we actually spent time with a couple of days ago. That was in Mbambile, which is west of here, and it was only one. So myself and Johan at the time, we were just talking about could be him or could be another, because so many of the single male hippo where they don't dominate females or just single themselves out there. And also, we went to check the location where we had a lions roaring. And the update was that the guys, they say there's a lions, but they're out of reach for us, which is in HOZA airstrip there. So that's where the sound for me was coming from. So it makes sense. That was a similar, probably lion's bride. So I'm going to shift more again to the north, look around. I know Kalamba, she actually lost in the middle of this thicket here. And there's a chance probably, we come across her again. We'd also like to spend time with her if it does come across her. And then, let me move forward, check around. I'm going to send you over to Tswalu with the jackal.
Good morning and welcome back to Tswalu. We just found a black-backed jackal and we're just quickly going to reposition the vehicle so that we can get a view of him. And it's going to stop over here. He's going to pop right out in front of a vehicle. So this is our second dog species for the morning. So black-backed jackals are probably one of the more common species of dog throughout southern Africa. Just going to reposition again. Just like the bat-eared fox, these guys also form lifelong pairs between a male and a female. And quite often we also find that they will have a young up to 2 years with them after that they have been raised. Quite often the young will also assist the parents or with raising the next generation of pups that were born thereafter leaving, where the new pups then will assist with the following year. So black-backed jackals are also quite interesting animals. They're incredibly smart. They believe that if you do catch them in certain types of traps and they do escape, that they will share that knowledge amongst one another, and those traps will be useless within that area. They're also pretty smart in terms of exploiting different situations. Especially, let's see if we can find him. Yeah, good morning, Janet. Yeah, he's definitely on a mission. I've not been able to find him again. It's most likely... Oh, here we go. In the distance, in the shade of a tree. He's most likely trying to find something to eat, or he's on his way back to a den site. One of the other moves that they do, which is pretty smart, is when they do go back to dens and the pair did catch something to eat, they will very likely tear it in half. And one individual will take a different route back, while the other will take another route back to the den, and preventing that other predators can take their food away. However, when it comes to dog species like African wild dog, they've overcome this by actually swallowing the food and regurgitating the food to the pups when they do get back to the den. Just going to reposition quickly.
So we're back at the impala carcass at Gowrie, Maine, and I'm not here for no reason. We're not just watching a dead impala for no reason. Apparently, not one, not two, but 3 spotted cats are on their way. So there's lots of vehicles just waiting. It's actually not on Chitwa, believe it or not. It's on Little Gowrie, very, very close to the boundary line, so we can't go in. But we've got a perfect view from here anyway. So if I can get the chance to see Sabui, Shasha and Langa, the family of spots, then that's exactly what I will wait for. That would be the perfect Christmas, especially since Kalamba decided to disappear on us. So everybody's waiting with bated breath. Everybody. It's a big gathering, and apparently they're making their way right here. So we're just going to sit tight. I know it's not the most pleasant thing to look at a carcass with nothing on it, positioned so perfectly in that marula there, but we're going to do it. Patience pays off out here in the wild. And I've always been desperate for a Sabui sighting. Had one not so long ago with Kharit, but sadly it wasn't the best visuals. It also was on Little Gowrie. Sabui's spending a lot of our time, most of our time on Little Gowrie these days. So it's a game of waiting, I'm afraid. I tried really hard for Kalamba. We went round and round and round, and she's probably taking a nap in that drainage line. Someone will come back for her carcass, whether it's Kalamba or Tunkana, who knows. The hyenas are definitely not going to get up the tree, so it's going to be a leopard that goes for it. Oh, many of you are very thankful that we're sharing our Christmas with you guys today. Yes, I'm very far from my family, so you're all my family today, and Marcel's going to make us a wonderful marula-flavoured dinner, which I'm very excited about. And just the fact that we're getting to see leopards for me is wonderful. It's been a real long period without them. So I'm just going to sit tight here. I really don't want to miss the chance of seeing this threesome. But for now, we're going to send you guys across to Andrew.
Good luck. Lawrence. So we now got it looks like a juvenile here, a lilac crested roller, trying to move around a little bit around this. Looks like marula tree, young marula trees. And it's so cool that, allows us, many of time these birds are all just going to vanish or move off, where this one finally moved off. But I'm going to see if I move forward, you get another visual again. It's a lilac, juvenile lilac crested roller, where they rub on feed. I'm sure Simon is going to try and zoom in again. Hopefully it stays. And there it is. So easy to tell. Usually even the juvenile, they show that whole full, coloration of the adult size. But then the tail is little kind of a square instead of this kind of fog tail in the end. And that's how you can able to tell this is a juvenile, it's not an adult yet, where the mother could be around. Sometimes the baby has two at the same time, or maybe one die. And then here it's all about now hunting technique that this bird is able to gain, and then the parents should be somewhere also watching from the distance, and then still the parents will be able to share whatever they got from the other side, which is mainly this type of grasshoppers mainly, and these all spiders. But hunting spider, these birds are gotta be careful. Some spider which they make webs, not easy for these birds to go catch these spiders, because otherwise they get stuck in a web. They only go for many of these spiders that move on the ground, or those that haven't actually developed their web big enough. And now it looks like the sun is going to come out slightly, where we believe it does. And the afternoon is going to be a lot of insects come about, fly around, and then it's going to be a lot of a benefit for even warbeck's eagles, these tawny eagles and things like that, because they also feed on chance of flying termites that may pop out and then trying to fly and then shed their wings. And this is only time you sometimes see hyena participating with many of birds trying to feed on these flying termites, because they're only available food at the same time in a given time. So you want to know how many roller species we have. So, in the winter we stick with the two species, which is a purple roller and this species lilac-breasted roller, where the summer now rise or came in where it's wet, and also have a European roller that came in, which I think we've been seeing them quite a few times. They're actually a very shy bird as well, but those one, European roller, they're the beauty, but they don't have that kind of lilac on their throat. But you see one color, only the top where it's slightly grayish a bit. And otherwise, we see three of them. And then one of the rarest one, it's a purple roller, where they're mainly, I don't know, they're probably harder to find, but they're around. But name roller, all of these rollers, their name came from the way they display rolling of an action when they fly up, especially males trying to impress the females by flying up to the air, coming down with this kind of action. Looks like this one of the warplane, and then when they do that, they go to land, but at the same time they do very specific call and then for their display. So I'm going to carry on, search around here again. Hopefully we found anything for you guys.
Well, welcome back to Tswalu. We're just sitting right on top of a dune crest at the moment, just enjoying the view and seeing what we can find. So right in front of us, that's a dune street with a different vegetation structure again than that we find in the dunes. But then meanwhile, we're just going to pan in onto some distant wildebeest that's busy moving over the open areas within the dune street. There's also some gemsbok quite far off in the distance. Can you just pan for us on the red sands? Anyway, so just wanted to point out these beautiful red coloration swirls that you see over here, just to give you an idea. Good morning, everyone, from wherever you are, and a Merry, Merry Christmas to all. Hope you're having a wonderful day, or are going to have a wonderful day, wherever you are. I'm Mike Anderson, behind the camera is Seb, and you've joined us at Eco Training Pridelands Conservancy with this lovely herd of buffalo, who are currently making their way down towards Leopard Dam, probably to have a little drink after a nice windy night. It's really lovely. We are with you a little bit later than we normally would be, because we've been gallivanting all over Pridelands trying to figure out where a male lion went from last night. Now, we had tracks and signs all over, and he seems to have grown wings and flown somewhere, and we're still trying to figure out where. But we've now found this. Oh, look at that buffalo's tail. It's blonde. What a beautiful buffalo. Not something that people often say about buffalo. As you can see, they're slowly moving and feeding along these termite mounds and going down towards the drainage line of Leopard Dam, where they're going to, I'm sure, have a bit of a drink. It is very wet this morning. That's a little bit of rain fell last night. So these buffaloes might not necessarily need to drink all that much, but they might mud wallow, since they'll be close to the dam nonetheless. Oh, that one's having a bit of a scratch underneath that thorny knobthorn tree there. Or maybe just getting stuck and trying to get untangled. They do have very tough skin, but I'm sure it's uncomfortable to be stuck in the thorns on those knob thorns nonetheless. This looks like it was the tail end of the herd. It doesn't look like a very huge herd of buffalo. Maybe just about 20 buffaloes in this group, maybe a little bit more than 20. There's our blonde-tailed buffalo in there somewhere, as well as this chunky boy feeding amongst these bushes there. So incredibly green. So we didn't only have lion tracks this morning, we also had a track of a leopard. Hey, Christmas is here. You should have Christmas spirit every day. Surely, I wish every day was Christmas. But yeah, we're hoping for a little Christmas miracle and we can find ourselves a leopard or a lion. We've seen tracks of both this morning, but it's so thick here right now, and with all this wind that's been happening, all the rain that's been happening, tracks and signs are very difficult to come by, and it's very likely that some of these animals have made kills during this tough weather and are now hiding in the bushes, and with all the tracks been washed away by the rain, it's very difficult to find them now if they're going to spend 3 days in the bushes. So anyway, we found buffalo. There's so many of them around at the moment that it's not so difficult to find them, which is good. Even the elephants have gone missing. with all this rain and the water flowing in the little rivers and drainage lines, they're no longer bound to the water holes. They can move all over. It's a very impressive looking buffalo, nice curved horns. What we are going to do with these, follow these buffaloes maybe around towards the water hole. That's a good question, and I'm not exactly sure of that answer, but I do believe that buffaloes, the males, can rank themselves in the hierarchy. Oh, that beautiful blonde buffalo. That one is the envy of all of its friends. I mean, certainly size has something to do with it, and age and the strength of the buffalo, because they fight over dominance of the harems or of the families of buffalo. So they will fight over it, and they will then establish themselves in a hierarchy. Just like many antelope species, fighting is a very important part of the social standing, or actually understanding the social standing. But then some of the younger individuals will get higher ranking status, being a pathfinder, finding the ways to the water. And so it's a difficult one. I mean, when we see big herds of buffalo, hundreds of buffalo together, that's not one family. That's a number of families that have come together for the means of finding food together, or because there's water or limited whatever. So we might actually find, now that food is so abundant, we might find the buffalo herds splitting off into smaller groups, which will mean less fighting over dominance over the larger, because the individuals won't be coming into contact as much. There's plenty of food now. They don't need to all be together. They can move off into groups of 10 or 20. So that's what this is now. As the dry season comes again and water becomes less abundant and food becomes scarce, you'll find the groups joining together to go to areas which do have good food, and then you'll find lots more fighting happening, especially around the water holes. Much like we saw with those bullfrogs yesterday, which are probably still fighting right now. Actually, we didn't go and check this morning, but I'm sure they probably are still having a bit of a barney. But while we follow these buffaloes in a loop-de-loop towards the dam, we'll send you back over to Lauren and see what she's up to.
No sign yet, I'm afraid. But everyone's still here. We've got a lot of vehicles just waiting patiently, so they're on their way. They were quite deep inside Little Gowrie, and they're moving northeast directly towards here. So I'm going to be really stubborn, got my patient pants on, and I'm just going to wait it out. Because Sabi is a beautiful female, successfully got 2 cubs, which are getting much older now, and she's not a female, or they are not a family, should I say, that we get to see too often. Yes, we get to see them. I had them not so long ago, and I think Tristan had them before that, but it's really not too often. Her territory as it stands at the moment, and it will change, because she's got 2 youngsters, she'll need to make way for her daughter at some point, but not yet. Just sort of touches the very southern end of Djuma, so around Treehouse Dam, Twin Dams. She doesn't really come very far in. She'd had clashes with Tansy many times. Her and Tandy's territory sort of border one another on the Djuma side. But it's definitely going to be worth the wait, everyone, I promise. It's going to be the best Christmas present ever, if it pays off. Manan, you are 15 years old? 16, sorry. You're 16 years old. What an age. It's a very long time for me, but what an age. She's not sharing her territory with anyone, Kalamba. We're very far away now. We've moved from where we were with Kalamba, and we've gone a lot further down south. So Kalamba's territory will be her territory, and she'll scent mark and she'll leave an odor fence, but it is penetrable to anyone. Any leopard can walk anywhere if they wish. Nomadic leopards can go into any other leopard's territory, and a lot of females actually move extraterritorially when they're seeking a mate. So these sort of scent marks and signs and claws and scrapes, they're just warnings to others. Don't come into my area. This is mine. If you come in, you're asking for trouble. So it's just a warning. And At the moment, Kalamba's not really sharing her territory with anyone that I know of, but that doesn't mean that leopards can't walk in and out. And Sele has been seen a lot recently. She does not appear to be territorial. So on Kalamba's east, you've got Tandi. On her south, you've got Sabi. On her west, you've got Shadulu. And on the north, I'm not too sure about that one. The leopard movements in Bufosuk, I'm not entirely clear about just yet. I need to sort of see more leopards up there and spend more time with them. So it's like a moving jigsaw puzzle. The territories will constantly move. They're not static. Some will push, some will pull. The bigger the territory, the better. But they've got to be able to maintain that. So in answer to your question, she's not sharing her territory with any other female. Now, how it works for males is that males set up a very large territory, and their goal is to have as many females in their territory as possible. So there will be a dominant male. Okay, I'm still going to sit tight here, and I hope that this gamble is going to pay off.
Good luck, Lauren. So on our search around here, we come across another herd of elephants. This time, there seems to be very much static, and looks like we're all just gonna be right on the road there. And as you can see, everybody is on its position of feed now. This is not actually moving in action. It's just all about getting what they could here. Grasses. Could be the same herd we saw this morning. Could be the difference where there's many of the different herds coming in and out. Especially it's wet. Oh, this female here, look what she's doing here in this marula tree. If you look at that, just how they looks like she's trying to feed on a combium layer. All she does is just peel the bark of the trees, and she used the tuskers to do that. The trunk will only help to grab and put in her mouth, separate the bark and the combium layer she needs, which is so much juice out in there. She might sometimes do it again, but she's going for grasses right now. So let's take a time here, listen to these elephants sound a bit. Robert, the marula fruit's not yet ready to be eaten yet, the fruit itself. And only around, maybe, 2 months to go, 1 month to go, February, that will be ripening. From there, this is where you're going to see a lot of these herds of elephants, rushing into those trees that they know for sure has a sweet fruit. There's going to be so much of competition there. So they're not ready yet to ripe. But also what I just witnessed is that I was checking on a lot of these trees, marula trees, to see if there is more of these fruits. Some has, many of them don't have. And many of these trees don't have. Is those for a couple of years we've seen they actually had produced more fruits. Maybe it's that it depends on the season sometimes. Some season allows this tree to provide more of fruit, and some season provide less. What amazing skill she is using in there, stripping off this bark. I'm not sure if she's gonna able to do it all the way around, which she does that there. The tree will be results of dried out, died. And that's a marula tree she's peeling off there. So I'm gonna move on, leave this herd of elephants. I'm gonna be sending you over to Tswalu.
Hi, good morning and welcome back to Tswalu. We just got out of the vehicle for a short while, had a little bit of a leg stretch, and then we found the track of a snake that was moving through these red dune sands. And this little track belongs to a horned adder. Just to show you a quick little picture over here, this is our horned adder. There you can see the horns on top of the head, hence the name horned adder. These are small little adders in comparison to the puff adder, and they only get sometimes between 50 and 60 centimeters maximum in length. So you can also notice that their coloration is so well adapted to these soil colors, as they often hide themselves in the soil and wait for small little prey animals such as lizards, rodents, frogs to get into striking distance of them. Another trick that they have up their sleeve is that some individuals actually have dark little black tails, which they will use as a lure to attract a potential prey item within range and striking range. So the movement that we see over here, this is what we refer to as a typical serpentine motion, where the snake is basically moving from side to side. And we can also see that this is very likely a male that has moved through here, as male adders have got longer tails, and it's left this tiny little drag mark in the middle of the track. So this little snake has another method of moving, which we call sidewinding, which provides a pattern that looks like a number of S's that goes from side to side. And it's basically a swimming movement through loose sand. Lastly, we also see that most snakes also leave a very straight pattern, which is called a caterpillar motion, which they simply contract and expand the belly scales to move forward. So we did follow this little track, and as it went on from here, we noticed that it went underneath this Kalahari taibos in the distance. And we've tried to see where it has come out, but it also seems as if it has dug itself in right over here somewhere at the back of this tree. At some stage it was also hiding itself over here when it dug itself into the soil, and then the next track just comes out from the back of this bush underneath this little thicket. So these snakes are mostly active at night and in the early parts of the morning before the sun rises. Good morning, Daniel. That's on that question, I wouldn't tell you that a snake is venomous by looking at its eyes, but we virtually know that almost all snakes are venomous, and they vary in terms of potency of their venom. But when it comes to adders, such as the one that we're looking at over here, as in the case of most adders, it's most likely a cytotoxin which they have, which destroys tissue cells. We also normally find that adders have fairly long fangs which they can inject into their prey. So some adder species, like the berg adder that we find in the escarpment of the Drakensberg Mountains, interestingly has a combination of venoms. Some individuals might be neurotoxic, some individuals might be cytotoxic, while other individuals might actually have a combination of both venoms. So normally with snakes, like adders, they have fairly long fangs, as we already mentioned, and these are foldable. Okay, so while other species such as cobras that have front fangs that are not hinged are fairly short, and then some species like boomslang and vine snake have got very short fangs that are placed very far back in the mouth. And when these snakes bite, they actually have to chew onto their prey, and it's a capillary reaction that actually takes the venom into the prey animal. Generally also with back-fang snakes, they tend to be hemotoxic, which affects blood, while the front-fang snakes, such as the cobras, tend to be generally neurotoxic, venomous.
Thanks, JP. So we're blocked here with no exits for us, which is so cool. You know, we managed to spend time with them again and then back with you guys. That tree has been actually now still busy with that female elephant. Looks like she's not giving it a little bit of break there. All she does every time looks at one of her young ones. She eats grasses, then she go back to that tree's deep bark. On the floor there, it's all falling off of these bark, which is out layer of the bark, but inside of a layer, which is a combium layer. As you can hear, it looks like she's gone again for it. In this situation where now it's actually a raining season, all plants are green, grass is green. These debarking trees is not actually happening quite often. So only in the winter, look at the whole piece of bark that she just got there. Just gonna see how she's gonna rip to get what she need and leave what she don't need. French toast. So you want to know the amount of muscles on their trunks. So it's thought to be anything from 80, 70 muscles, and that actually able to control the whole trunk. Or could be more than 80 muscles in the trunk. That's only guessing. So, and that trunk doesn't have any of a bone. What you see there, that elephant able to use it, it's just because it's very strong, these muscles are able to control that trunk. Okay, so I think it says that 40,000 muscles, which is quite a lot though. 40,000, that's quite a lot. So no bone in the trunk, it's just the muscles. And that muscle only allows, sometimes when they have a problem, sometimes the trunk can paralyze. And that's a very big problem if it ever happened. Because it's only a weapon and it's only a hand. They need nostrils to breathe. They can still breathe, but they cannot able to use it to able to feed or anything because they cannot control it. So whenever that paralysis happened, probably results of death take place. And they're loving it here. Since we got here, they actually haven't moved far. So, but I've seen some of them that they were on the other side of the road, already crossed to join the others. This young girl here. Looks like she's gonna come right close to us. The female and the male, they will have a tusk. And they'll have a temporal glands, both male and the female. So no big male in this group. It happens it's a lot of a young male, which they still probably age of 4, maybe 6 years old, and those are still allowed to be in a herd. Still, they need a lot of support from their parents for a safety reason. And they're so quiet, but when they're disturbed, those surprises you sometimes. They can run away for something that is very so small. Even maybe noises that they don't understand, or maybe a lizard that moved through the bushes disturbed quite a lot of grasses that don't see it. And they will run crazy and they will stop and maybe trumpet again and then trying to understand what was happening. So they still get nervous. So I'm going to finally move on now because I got a road. So while I'm doing that, I'm going to be sending you over to MARNA in Ngala.
Right, so welcome back to Ngala. We are still driving parallel to the riverbed, looking for any signs of that leopard, and there are so many big trees along the banks of the river here. So we decided to stop just to show you a few of them. Seeing as we don't have any Christmas trees here, we don't have any pine trees here, I think I'm going to dub the marula tree the low-felt Christmas tree. So the tree you can see on the left-hand side there, Bika's going to zoom in on the bark for us there. I'm sure most of you are familiar with marula trees. It's quite a well-known tree. And a lot of the times people describe this bark as, it looks like it's been hit with a golf ball, so lots of little blotches. Now, I don't know if you know the false marula tree. The reason we stopped here was because there's a marula and a false marula right next to each other. So if we go over to the false marula, you'll notice that this bark looks slightly different. Also blotches, but it's almost like it's more elongated compared to that of the normal marula. Now, we've gone ahead and picked some leaves here for you, just to show you the difference. I'm going to start with the marula. So that's the marula leaf. And these little leaflets that you can see they've got tiny little stems there. But then if you take the false marula, you can see these leaflets are seated right onto the stalk or the main stem here. So a slight difference in the two. Now both of them have really tasty fruit. Some of you might have tasted the marula fruit before, but the false marula also has really nice fruit. It's a lot sweeter compared to the marula, and we've been chatting about it. I'm really, really excited for the fruits of both these trees, and you already can see little fruits forming there. So not too long we'll be snacking on them, or us and the animals. I usually hoard these marula fruits. Towards the end of the season, I'll just pick up a whole bunch of them and even put some in my freezer. They're so... All right, I think we're going to continue and see if we can find any signs of that lead.
My name is Ross, and I'm a field guide at andBeyond Phinda Private Game Reserve. I love getting questions from guests on WildEarth because I love sharing and learning information about nature with new people, and it also makes me feel like you're all joining me in real life. If you want to ask a question on WildEarth, then you need to register on our website. Once registered, go to our live Safari page and submit your question below our live feed.
This is Rusty. He's my favorite vehicle, and we've been through all the good times here in the bush. Now, if you feel a connection to Djuma Game Reserve like I do, then we have a fantastic opportunity for you. You can have your name engraved on a brushed metal plaque just like this one, and we will attach it to Rusty so you can always be with us on safari in spirit. We will even send you a digital photograph once your plaque is mounted on Rusty. Spaces are limited, so grab your spot now.
What fascinates me most about the animal circle of life is the intricacies between the large and the very, very small. I mean, it's very easy to go out there and find the large. Once you found the large, the cascading effect down to the small absolutely fascinates me. Alertness and situation awareness is by far the #1 aspect for protecting ourselves out on safari.
Catch up with the guides daily here on WildEarth. Have you been watching WildEarth and dreamt of being right there on safari with one of the guides? Well, now you can. WildEarth is offering you a chance to buy a ticket to dream. You or a friend can hop on board a live WildEarth show and join our guide on safari. The ticket is redeemable at any of our locations, anytime in the future. Only a limited number of tickets are available, so don't wait. Get your ticket now and start dreaming. Terms and conditions apply.
We have moved on from the carcass. There's lots of stations still there. And according to reports, there are 4 different impala kills made by Sabi and gang. I don't know why. I don't know if they just went on a little killing spree. The ewe that was on the ground is gone, which I expected. I imagine a scavenger would have came for that one. And Sabi and cubs have gone flat again, so they were on their way and they may still make their way. This may be a good thing for this afternoon, where we decided to come to the dam. This is Chitwa Dam, just to give you a view. It doesn't look much different, to be perfectly honest, from the last few days with all the rain, and that's because it was so full anyway. This is a huge dam, and sort of small differences you really won't be able to see. But the resident hippos, the bloat of hippos, I love that collective noun, I don't know why, are still here. The usual. It's probably on very, very cold days when it's windy outside. Sometimes it's actually warmer to be in the water than it is to be outside and wet. So I'm not going to go too far. We've still got a little bit of time left for drive, and I'll stay in the area just in case there's any signs of Sabi, but my frustration levels are high. I love the sounds around Chitwa Dam. It's still one of my favourites. Mark, it depends what you mean by really cold. It does get very, very cold here in winter, believe it or not. You tend to forget that when you're in summer. And the temperatures drop. We go out in hat and scarves and gloves and water bottles and blankets and thermals. It's cold. And of course the hippos can survive. They've got a really thick layer of fat for insulation. And they will spend a lot of time in the water. Can sometimes be warmer in the water, and of course they can be warmed up by the winter sun. But if you mean really cold conditions as Arctic or Scotland conditions, no, not necessarily. But out here they definitely survive the winter, and it does get really cold, more cold than people would believe. Their skin itself is very, very thin, it's very fine, but they do have a very thick layer to keep them warm. It's actually more worrying for a hippo to be exposed to the sun and risk dehydration from that really fine epidermis than it is to be cold. They're a mammal after all. They're a sort of amphibious ungulate, but they're still a mammal, and therefore the metabolic activity of hippos, just like humans, will maintain the body at a constant temperature. It's not deriving heat from its external environment like ectotherms. It's an endotherm. So we can also survive extremely cold conditions. Yes, we do put lots of layers on, but the hippos will survive. And energetics come into play, and they do save a great deal of energy by being in the water. So they're not wasting energy, they're not letting themselves go into a deficit and running into trouble when it's cold. So by being buoyed up in a water body, they're actually saving a lot of energy. And adult hippos, both male and female, will eat anywhere between 15 to 40 kilograms of grass per day. And that's only 1.5% of its body weight. Now, usually with mammals in the animal kingdom, let's not talk about humans, they need to eat 5% of their body weight in order to sort of sustain their energy levels and their metabolism. And they meet all their nutritional requirements. So hippos actually eat a lot less than most mammals. It's a drop of 3.5%. Okay, so we're just going to scratch around Chitwa, see what else we can find for this morning. But for now, we're going to send you across to Pridelands with some vultures.
So it's taken us a little bit of a while to get to the other side of the drainage line with Leopard Dam, and the elephants have been having an absolute field day pushing over trees. But luckily, in the meantime, we found these two white-backed vultures sitting on a beautiful leadwood tree. I think it's a leadwood tree. It might be an old knobthorn. I think it's a leadwood tree. Sitting proudly on top of this dead tree, scanning all over here. And I believe they are white-backed vultures. It's the most common vulture that we get around this area. But another that looks quite similar is a Cape vulture. But they're not usually found roosting down here on these trees. Normally they would be up on the mountain. That's where they nest. But these two here sitting here, because it's relatively cold weather, it's difficult for these birds with their heavy bodies. They weigh over 5 kgs, which doesn't seem like much, but for a bird, that's a lot of weight to try and carry. And so they're sitting here waiting for hard evidence that there's something to eat before they waste energy to try and fly somewhere else. That, or at least for the sun to come out so that they can use their massive wingspan to fly from place to place to look for food.
They've got a wingspan that's over 2 meters long, so that's taller than a tall human being, longer than a tall human being, wider than a tall human being, I suppose. And they use that to catch these thermal updrafts, these hot airs rising from the ground, to take them higher and higher and then soar from place to place, using as little energy as possible, because it might be days between feeding for these birds. So they want to use as little energy as possible. You can see how they've tucked their necks in like that to try and keep them warm with this cool wind blowing. Got their backs to the prevailing wind as well to try and use the big wing feathers to protect them from most of the wind. Incredible eyesight these birds have. So we've seen a whole bunch of them. There's 6, 7 of these vultures we've seen over the last hour or so as we've been driving around, sitting on dead trees just like this. I suppose they were probably all caught flying over this area when the storms and the rain came, and so they've just been roosting for the past day or two, waiting for some weather that would take them away from here and into maybe better feeding areas. Although to say that we know there's predators around here. We've seen tracks of them up and down, and so there's no reason why they couldn't also have potentially found a carcass and be waiting for a predator to finish feeding. Although there's not that many of them, so I doubt that is the case. I think they're probably just waiting. And every now and again you see other little birds flying past in the screen. Those are swifts. In fact, there's a couple of them that are going to come past just now. There it goes. That's a swift. I believe it's probably a little swift, although it's very difficult to tell at this distance. Goodness gracious me, I'd love to be able to answer that question, but unfortunately we had a bit of trouble with hearing that. Could you maybe try and say that question again for me? I'd love to answer it. Probably a question about vultures, and how, I'm going to assume it was how... No. Something about the vulture's back, and these are called white-backed vultures, but I couldn't get the question, but they do have a white patch on their back. I couldn't get much more than that, unfortunately. Our audio is breaking up quite badly. How can I speculate what was the question?
I think it is about the white patch on the back.
The white patch on the back. Yeah, okay, well, I mean, that's the only thing I could think of. And yeah, they do have a white patch on the back, so when they open their wings and they fly, you will see them. So if these two were to fly off right now, you'd be able to see that white patch on their back quite clearly. The Cape vulture, which looks very similar otherwise, doesn't have that white patch. It does look quite pale, and so sometimes it's a little bit difficult, but it's not easy. Ooh, are those elbows or shoulders on their back? We were so far wrong, Seb, with that question. Oh, wow. Are those elbows or shoulders on their backs? Okay, so it's very difficult to tell. So from where that bird is right now, if you would zoom in for me, please, there, Seb. So that bent area right next to its head there, where you can see the wing, that would technically be the wrist of the bird, okay? So that thing with the highest point right now, that's technically the wrist. The elbow would be right down at the bottom, sort of where, if you follow that shoulder down all the way to where those light feathers meet the darker feathers, that would be where the elbow would be on this bird's wing. And then, actually, I've got a really cool picture in the book that I can show you, which will help to answer that question even better. Give me 1 second here, Seb, to find the vultures. Okay, cool. So that's a really cool picture that shows the whole bird's shape. Okay, so these are all the vultures that look quite similar, Cape and white-backed vultures. So this is the Cape vulture, this is white-backed. The Cape vulture is generally, once it gets to its adult stage, is much paler in color underneath, and the white-backed is much darker over this side. So what you're seeing there when the bird, that high point on the bird, is this part here. So you can imagine there's like fingers. So there's the bird's very small bone that goes all the way along here, and then from there comes these very long feathers. So that's the wrist is about there. The elbow would be here, and the shoulder is right up here attached to the bird itself. I hope that's helpful. I hope that helps to answer that question. It's difficult to tell, though. Birds are so interesting. If you would take all the feathers off a bird, they're tiny, tiny animals. They look massive, but they're actually very small in comparison to what you see And that's because they need to be light. So they're covered in these feathers, which are very light, very flexible, but also quite rigid and strong, which allows them to fly high up in the sky. You can see these two just sitting there, pruning and waiting. Preening and waiting. So we're going to wait here a little bit longer and see if these vultures, this looks like sun's going to come out, they might fly off.
So we've stopped at yet another marula tree, and this time not to admire the tree, but we found a little tree, a little friend in a hole in the tree. So a little rock monitor. He's still quite small, if you take into consideration how large they can get. And he's just been sitting here watching us for the last 10 minutes or so. Look at that camouflage. We almost drove past him. Blends in really, really well. Actually even see the little looking past him in front there. So they feed on insects and, you know, all kinds of all other little things that he'd catch in there. Maybe millipedes or small mammals, birds. So that hole that he's in, if we just go a little bit further up on that branch, because if you can just zoom out a little bit. Further up, where the branch broke, yeah. So you can see where the branch broke there. I can zoom in there. So there. So that was probably done by an elephant. So he broke this branch, and you can see those little holes there. So wood-boring beetles got into the tree, and they started hollowing it out. So it looks like it's pretty rotten, and that's extended down to where this rock monitor is sitting, and that's why that hole formed. And now it's the perfect little hideout for him. Let's see. Went all the way down. He hasn't moved one bit since we've been here. Everyone's saying he's got his eye on us. He definitely does. And he's a bit small, though. I think Bika and myself can take him. What do you think? Yeah, I know. He's not going to get lucky here. Stick to the insects. Yeah, you often find them in trees because they'll go raid birds' nests as well. This is one of the largest monitors we find out here, with the water monitor being slightly bigger. So when this monitor is full grown, he could get up to about 2 meters, whereas the water monitors, they'll reach about 2.5 meters or so. They look slightly different. The water monitors have, where this one has that creamish, like beige coloration under the head or on the neck area. The water monitors have like yellow, bright yellow, which is quite beautiful. And as the name states, you'll find the water monitors around water. A lekker vaan for the Afrikaners out there. The sunshine, how much do they weigh? So a large rock monitor could be around 30 kilograms, maybe up to 35 kilograms. It's quite a heavy reptile. See, not as big as a crocodile, but I think, as far as the reptiles go, it's probably the Nile crocodile out here, then the water monitor, and then the rock monitor. That's a large lizard. Quite a beautiful lizard. I've seen eagles catch them, so that's probably why he's in this hole as well. You know, he blends in really, really well. Like we said, he's camouflaged really well. If he had to be out in the open, a nice big martial eagle or a tawny eagle, one of those, would definitely try and take him. Right, I think we're going to continue, and we're going to send you off to Tswalu.
Good morning and welcome back to Tswalu. It's just after 8 in the morning. It's already 27 degrees Celsius in the shade, and most of the animals have already retreated into the shade or back into their burrow systems. So as we drove, we found these little spider lilies that we're looking at the moment. So these little flowers normally pop up after that we have rain in the Kalahari, and they don't last for very long. Hence the Afrikaans name, which means aandblommetjie, which means evening flower. If you translate it, they literally disappear in a day or two. So what I do find particularly interesting about this plant is that the bulb is often used by the sand hunters where they would like to use for inducing hallucinations. And what they'll normally do is they'll make a small incision on the head and then rub the bulb onto that opening or cut which they've created to induce the hallucination. Now, in general, when we do find sun hunter-gatherers, or if they would like to go into a state of hallucination, they do so by means of rhythmic dancing and clapping and song. And eventually they will become physically exhausted and enter a state of hallucination. So one of the first states of hallucination, what we generally find, is where they will start seeing lines and very random patterns. And this is also quite often represented in both the rock art, both in paintings as well as in petroglyphs, which is where etchings are made into stone. The second type of hallucination that they see or pattern that they see is generally human or animal-like forms. And in the highest state of hallucination, they generally start seeing forms of half animal and human-like creatures, which is also often represented into little pictures of rock art. So what we also find that's particularly interesting about one of the drawings that we most commonly find with these rock art sites is a eland. And this is one of the animals that they believe to transform into when they do go into these states of hallucination. And this enables them to find rich hunting grounds and areas where they can go and gather. And based on that hallucination, they will determine where they will be heading next. Zini, I would put it down to many years of trial and error, because it's quite difficult to live off plants because there's so many of them that is potentially toxic. Sometimes some of the plants that they would feed or use as a food type would simply be by means of observation and looking for animals that they know that can eat plants and fruits that is not toxic. So from here we're going to go back to Lauren, who's busy viewing a giraffe.
We've came across some giraffes too. Actually, a very pale one here. I think it's a female. Oh no, I think it could be a young male. I'm not getting a very good look at the genitals. But it looks like there's bald patches in the middle of the ossicles there. But small and petite either way, and very light in colour. very thin neck. See how thin it is? Now, of course, giraffes do bend down. They absolutely do, to drink. They bend down to the ground for water, for osteophagia, which is to pick up bones and eat them. They're known to chew bones, and this is to sort of supplement their diet with both calcium and phosphorus. And also geophagia, so they will bend down to eat soil, which also looks slightly bizarre, but if they were, deficient in certain minerals and salts, they'll decide to take some soil and chew it. So that's the 3 reasons that they'll really bend down to the ground, but you'll also see them bending down at any point in day if there's some delicious vegetation that's slightly lower than them. And they're equipped to do so. There's no way that they could bend over constantly if they were going to risk giant head rushes. That would cause them to faint or keel over. So they've got a special sort of network of really small capillaries that counteract an overflow of blood, if you like, every single time they bend down. There'll be an overload in pressure otherwise. I mean, the giraffe's brain sits at about 5 meters off the ground, about 2 meters away from the heart, and it's pumping a lot of blood. I'm sure it's about 60 litres of blood every minute for an adult. And therefore, they've got a really special network of capillaries. And it just controls that blood flow to the brain when the giraffe is bending down. They've also got a lot of special valves in their neck to assist with this process. And sort of on the contrary to the belief that they have a huge heart, yes, it's huge in comparison to humans, but it's completely relative to their size. It isn't out of proportion or any larger than ours relative to our body size. They just have an extremely thick walls of the heart. So the walls are very, very thick, but it's not actually larger relative to the size. And again, this is a mechanism to sort of control the blood pressure when they are bending down. They've got a very special atlas joint as well at the base of their skull that allows them to tilt their head vertically on such an awkward position on the end of that very, very long neck. And in addition to that, they've got very special ligaments. They've got a suspensory ligament that holds their neck up. Joe, yes, they can. I've never seen females be aggressive, but males, absolutely. They will neck one another using the ossicones, those ossicones right on the top of the head, and they'll sort of swirl their neck very, very fast and hurl those ossicones into one another's sides. And young bulls will do this in play, sort of just to engage with one another, as most young boys in any species do. But the adult bulls, when they're really, really necking, they will really injure one another. And one of the worst fights I've ever seen between giraffes was in Tswalu with Davi, and there was blood. They were drawing blood from one another, from under their chin, the chest, the rib cage. It was very, very violent, and the sound of the blows of the neck was incredible. So yes, they can be very, very aggressive, and that's generally how they do that when they fight. They sort of club one another. We call this necking. Because, well, they're using their neck. I think this is a young boy. We are going to drive past the carcass one more time. But I do believe Sabui and family have gone flat somewhere, so it's not ideal for us. Beautiful, gentle giant, everyone, yes. Not so gentle when you see the males fighting, but yes, they're so graceful, giraffes. They really are. They see all, they have quite the height advantage up there. And they're not as silent as people thought. Giraffes sort of was a general consensus a long time ago that giraffes were mute, if you like. the silent ones of the bush. And that's not the case at all. Lots of studies have proved that they do communicate with one another and they're constantly talking. Believe it or not, it's just not within the human hearing range. And they particularly communicate a lot at nighttime. And this is mostly because, well, it's dark. And although they do have good night vision, it doesn't extend very, very long distances. And therefore, they remain in constant communication with one another. And this is fairly recent science. They have a number of vocalizations as well that we can hear, and they use this to communicate an alarm. Miss Sunshine, not at all. Just have one heart. And as I mentioned earlier, the myth has been debunked that it's an extremely large heart in proportion to their size. Just one heart. It's completely relative to their size. It's just got extremely thick walls. And all these specialized sort of adaptations, if you like, are to counteract the fact that the brain is so high up. So it's got to pump blood a little bit extra harder in order to get blood from the heart to the brain. Defy gravity, if you like. And also to prevent any sort of head rush the giraffe would get. So this network of capillaries, they're the ones doing the job of constricting and dilating to try and control the blood flow that's being pumped from the heart. But no, they just have one heart. And they've actually got the exact same number of vertebrae that we have. They have 7 vertebrae. There's really not additional vertebrae in there to make their necks longer. And this is the joints. The actual vertebrae joints are much larger, of course, and the space in between the vertebrae is much longer, but it's still the same number of vertebrae that we have. Jackie, you're asking why are giraffes something, something, something? So much darker. There's just variation in colour. It always used to be thought that the males, as they get older, it was almost like a general rule of thumb that you can gauge the age of a giraffe by looking at their coloration. That's not the case. There's a new study that recently came out, and what was the name of it again? It was something to do with a dark horse. And it shows that the darker the male is actually linked to social status. So when they become dominant, a dominant male, and they will do this through clubbing, their patches, or sort of thermal patches I like to call them, become much darker. And those males that tend to not be dominant, there's another giraffe over there, Marcel. Do you need me to move? Let me just reposition. Those giraffes that stay lighter are those males that are more submissive, and it might be through choice that they stay submissive. So what they'll do is they'll try and sneak in and mate with the females when the dominant males are not looking. Okay, I'm going to look around one more time at the carcass, and for now we're going to send you guys across to Andrew.
Alright, so yeah, we've been disappeared for a while, trying to search around in the eastern area. A lot of the tracks of the wild dogs that were running around in that area. But I decided to come back this way because somehow it's already a few vehicles that are working in the area, so we gotta give each other a chance to work around here. We gotta come across in these piles of rhino dung. Got a lot of looks like one visible of a dung beetles, which is still feeding dung over here. But only one. There it is. You got it there, Simon? Yeah, right there. So this is actually rhinomedon. And the reason these dung beetles respond to this area could be maybe more of them that already have rolled their balls away.
We did find the buffalo herd eventually again. They did cross the drainage line, and it looks like they might have just passed Leopard Dam without actually stopping to drink. As I mentioned before, there's plenty of water and condensation all over this grass, so as these buffaloes eat, they're actually getting most of the water requirements that they need. It's mostly females that we can see around here. Most of the males have moved on ahead to the front of the herd, where they may be protecting. There's one just on the top right of the screen now, just moved behind the bushes. Look at this old grumpy looking girl. Yes, don't be grumpy. It's not so bad. Look how every patch of exposed skin is covered in flies. That's amazing. So a lot of these flies can actually bite, and they cut small wounds into the buffalo, and then they suck at the fluid that comes from those. Not all of them. These ones don't seem to be bothering this buffalo too much, but look how many there are. There's a ton of them. So that's why you often find buffaloes constantly moving their ears and their tails, swatting away these annoying insects. And that's why they tolerate oxpeckers, which I can hear one right now. I can't see it, but they tolerate oxpeckers, helping them to get rid of all these annoying biting insects and flies. Now I actually see the blonde buffalo again. I don't know if you can see it there, Seb, just behind over there, that very golden looking one. It's so odd. It doesn't even look like, I suppose it is quite a young buffalo. That's why it is that color. So just there, sandwiched between the two darker ones, is that very, very blonde buffalo. You can just see its tail switching there. It's actually an incredible color. It is a bit younger than the others, but not super young. So it'll be interesting to see if that color stays throughout its life, because buffaloes tend to get darker as they get older. And there you can see all the oxpeckers also landing on the buffaloes. They're starting to settle down here. It's a good place to rest if you're a buffalo. Plenty of grass, lots of shade, and not so far from the water and the mud. These two red-billed oxpeckers, much more common than the yellow-billed, which we don't see that often. Very common birds, very much associating with these larger mammals, but they can also land on things as small as warthogs. Not as common to be seen there, especially when there's so many buffaloes around. Oh, look at those flies, clouds of them, oh my word. I wonder what it must be like in places like East Africa when there's the Great Migration and millions of them. It must be so interesting, it must be so uncomfortable.
So we came now across. There is some velvet monkeys that are jumping around in this tree over here, but they're very doing a lot of movement. They're not static. And there was quite a few of them all just rush up into this wood. There is one there, as you can see, but one of the little one, or velvet monkeys. So they're on search for their own food, which is they would feed on fruits, flowers, these berries, and they live in troop, which is can be number of them there, sometimes 16, 18 maybe of them, and they will just relax. Sometimes when they're disturbed, which is spending a lot of time up in this tree, they will be able to spot the danger, and they will kind of like give alarm call if there is any approach surprising them. Where they would be hunted by leopard many a time. Even a martial eagle, those big birds, will be able to hunt them as well. And for that, they have a kind of like very few different call for any of the different predators around. Whether it's a snake or leopard or lions or human, they can still do a specific call for those to be able to warn each other. So I'm gonna stay here. There's a few game probably is gonna arrive here.
Look at this nice close-up of this female buffalo, really showing off those patches by the eye. And a lot of buffaloes have these bare patches of skin on their face like this. And now I hear lots of theories about it. And some theories are that there is where the ears, when they flick like this, like the ears just tap that part of the face often. I personally don't think that's really the case. I think that it's more glandular, because you see buffaloes often rubbing their heads in the ground and rubbing on things. So I think that's a kind of a glandular skin which leaves maybe a scent marker of some sort. But I'm not sure. I've never heard any definitive answer as to why many buffaloes have these bare patches of skin. Could also be some sort of parasite that lives specifically on that part of a buffalo's body, I suppose. You know, human beings, we all have a type of a mite which lives in our eyebrows and eyelashes. And they only live there. They live nowhere else on our body, but almost every single human being has them. So it stands to reason that maybe buffaloes would have something like that lives only on that specific point on the buffalo. You can see all of them now just ruminating, no longer really walking around and feeding. The feeding has been done for the day, and now that it's warming up slightly, it's now time to just regurgitate that food back into its mouth from the first stomach chamber, and then chew it again to get more nutrients, and then re-swallow it and over again. Remember, this is a ruminant, so it's got a four-chambered stomach, unlike the other bulk grazers that have just the one big stomach chamber. Or not really just one, but anyway, it's much more simplified than the four-chambered stomach. And this is a slow process, releasing energy slowly over time, but it's very efficient. Whereas the bulk grazers, things like elephants, for example, bulk feeders, they just ferment the food, and so they don't digest it very well. French toast, not many hours, to be honest. Most animals in the wild, apart from the predators, who don't need to fear too many other things, don't spend a lot of time sleeping. So a buffalo might just sleep for an hour or two at the most in a day. When they're in a group like this, you might see them lying down and resting, and they'll sporadically sleep, throughout the day. But they won't, lie down flat and sleep for hours and hours on end. It just wouldn't work that way, because they need to be able to get up and run away as quick as possible if there was danger. So I don't know exactly how many hours, but certainly not more than a few hours a day. Much less than what we need to keep our higher brain functions working correctly. Buffaloes often many wild animals work more on instinct than anything else. And so, they can operate on less sleep. Their body is just doing what it does, almost automatically. That's why they always tell, if you're a student or if you're going to take an exam or if you're about to go for a job interview or something, they say you must get 8 hours of sleep so that your mind is ready to go and it's fresh. Buffalo, if you're just working on instinct, you don't need that much sleep. This one here up ahead seems to have caught something on the wind. Thought I heard a bit of a grunt. Could be more buffaloes approaching, or maybe something else. Henry, excellent question, very pertinent at this moment, because you see this buffalo here with its head up, sniffing like that. Now, that's not exactly a sign that it's upset, but it's definitely a sign that something has got its attention. It's got its head up, it's sniffing, the ears are forward, it's looking around. So that's the first sign that a buffalo has noticed something is not quite right, and it's looking around. Then what buffaloes will often do, if they then become agitated, you'll see them like jumping on the spot a little bit and turning around and doing a bit of a spin. Sometimes they'll actually dig at the ground, paw at the ground with their big feet. And if they become even more agitated, they might start to thrash their horns amongst the vegetation and do short little rushes forward. But generally speaking, they don't give us too much warning. When a buffalo is upset, it'll either run away from you, or it'll spend a short time thinking and then run towards you. Either of those outcomes is not great, but I know definitely which one is worse for the individual in question. If you are the one on foot and that buffalo runs towards you, you are going to be in serious trouble. But none of these buffaloes are showing us even the slightest sign of concern. In fact, none of them are even really looking at us, which is great, which is what we want. We want all animals to do their thing without being disturbed by us in any way possible. Hi Kenny, I'm 9 years old. It's nice to hear youngsters also watching today on Christmas Day, the beautiful animals out in nature on this live safari. Now, the most scariest encounter I've ever had, I've had quite a few scary encounters. Maybe if I can talk about a buffalo encounter. Well, so I was walking in the northern part of the Kruger National Park, which is very full of buffaloes, lots of buffaloes, and we're walking in a thick area full of mapani trees. Now, we don't have any mapani trees here, but they grow thick and green, and it's very difficult to see anything on there. And we were walking along a game path, and I remember, I don't know how it was that we didn't hear anything, but it was windy, a little bit windy, and all of a sudden there was a sound like these buffaloes breathing. We stopped, and we realized that there were a lot of buffaloes all around us, and then they started bellowing like this. And we couldn't see them at all. We just could hear them moving around, and they must have caught our scent because they started to charge around. And now with the wind swirling through that mapani thickets, they didn't know where we were. We didn't know where they were really. So we just all huddled in the center. And the buffaloes ran right past us on either side, like a stampede of buffaloes, maybe over 100 buffaloes. And I remember thinking at that point that we were very lucky to make it out of there with no one being injured. But generally speaking, these animals don't want conflict with us. They just smelt humans, and they didn't know where they were, and they just wanted to run away. They weren't charging at us. They just didn't know where we were. But if I was you, I'd avoid a situation like that. Definitely don't want to repeat that. Not that these buffaloes are going to do that. They certainly don't look like they want to cause us any harm. Just thinking about that encounter has my heart rate up a little bit. I was still a student at that time. I was what they call an apprentice field guide. So I was backing up. I was the second rifle for the lead guide, and it was quite scary to think that I'm responsible for the safety of the people behind me. Well, now it looks like they're actually moving off. Some of the buffaloes were resting, but it seems like the small group that was resting is the only group left. The rest of the buffaloes have all slowly sauntered away, heading towards some open clearings where they'll probably do a bit more feeding. The nice thing on a day like today is that it's not so warm. So they don't need to find shade and shelter. They're not going to overheat. They can slowly plod along the whole day looking for the best grass. Can hear a lot of bird activity. Sounds like the Wahlberg eagle is maybe having a little bit of an argument. Jumping castle, I think that's just what we call sexual dimorphism. So that's more like the difference between males and females so that they can easily be told apart, and so that when it comes to, fighting over dominance of an area, it helps to differentiate the individuals. I don't think it serves any other real purpose. I mean, I think it's just a genetic thing. Females generally are lighter. Although, as you can see here, there are adult female buffaloes, and they're quite dark in color. It's not immediately obvious that they are females. As they get older, they get darker. So you'll find baby buffaloes, even the male ones, will be very pale in color, as pale as that one with the blonde tail. And as they get older, they get darker. It's not a hard and fast rule. As you saw there, that relatively mature buffalo was quite pale. And I mean, we might even get leucistic individuals, which are almost white in color, or even albino buffaloes, which are completely white, no color at all. And they even have red eyes, which is quite unusual. And they wouldn't survive very long, because without the melanin, which is the dark pigment, what makes them dark like this, without that they would suffer from the UV radiation from the sun. In fact, most animals that are leucistic or albino tend not to survive to full maturity. Which is interesting, because at Ngala, I think there's 2 young lions that are getting quite old now. Or at least I think they were. I haven't heard about them for a while. From the Birmingham Pride, 2 leucistic lions seem to be doing quite well. These ones don't seem like they want to go anywhere. They're big and strong enough, even if they're not in the massive group. As long as there's a few of them together, they can look out for each other and keep each other safe.
Join our Explorers program so we can keep on sharing nature with the world. For a monthly subscription, you will have the opportunity to win fantastic WildEarth expeditions, have access to an animal identification app, receive weekly highlights from our shows, and much more. All the money will go to keeping these live safaris on air, which in turn connects a global population with nature. WildEarth is launching our brand new Explorer program with an opportunity to win a very special WildEarth expedition. The lucky winner will get a behind-the-scenes WildEarth experience at the magnificent and beyond Ngala Tainted Safari Camp. The prize includes a 3-night stay for you and a friend with a chance to sleep out in the unique Ngala treehouse. Become a WildEarth Explorer and stand a chance to win this and many other prizes. Terms and conditions apply.
My name is Lauren, and I'm currently working in Djuma Private Game Reserve here in South Africa. I love answering your questions during the live safaris. It's my favorite part. It feels like you're on the vehicle with me, and I'm able to teach you exactly what you want to know. If you want to ask a question on WildEarth, then you need to register on our website. Once registered, you must go to the live safari page and ask your question below the live feed.
Hello, boy. You are a monster. And he's coming right up to us. Hello, boy. Oh, settle down. Settle down. He is very, very close. He's pushing his trunk against the car. You can feel the car moving. Hey, 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 hey. Stop that.
Expect the unexpected here on WildEarth daily.
Beautiful. So this last spot where we just seen the monkeys running around, we haven't actually moved far. And what you're seeing right here, this is a 4-minute frogs. Looks like they are still around this water hole, or some of them have done already their nest. And then the process of nest take place is, sometimes take overnight for them to be able to do that. And all for her job as a female to produce forms, as a male to fertilize them. Where sometimes you come across those huge white form nests, which actually make by them, whereas some of them are these one. And it's so important they're always making sure that it's always there right on top. There's a point of water underneath where there's a time where these tadpoles are managed to emerge from these nests. They were able to, attach to the water right away. And then otherwise they're also careful doing that, because if it's very close to the water where they will get eaten by these terrapins that they're in the water also. And Egyptian geese as well, you see them sometimes feed on these nests. And that's why, sometimes they gotta make sure they're out of reach, away from the other predators. And since we have a lot of rain, you'll be seeing a lot of, or hearing a lot of a noise of frogs, especially at the night. Yeah, indeed, it is very hard. We actually, we find this, the monkey here. We all literally actually drove past them. So Simon just mentioned there is something looks like a frog, and we already way past. But anyway, when we reverse, we find all these frogs. They actually well camouflage for their own defense. Where they are, it's not actually easy for even this bird to spot them. And they only have a trouble with the snake a lot of time. That's why where they are now, that branch is underneath, there is a water. There's no chance for the snake to go close to them. But if a snake ever gets close to around them there, it's going to be a lot of moving around for this creature to move away from these snakes. And the formalist frogs, you often sometimes find them during the time where it's not actually breeding season, mainly when it's not a raining season. Then they won't, more likely not to actually able to lay their eggs, because it's a waste of time. And they only do that just after they rained, and then that night, very evening, they will able to, the female should go into places where she knew it's so important for, it's safe for, away from these other predators as well. And what she does, she only produces a form where males will go right on top of her. You display the back legs, is how the male will be able to fertilize these nests, and then the whole form will come out right bigger. And then sometimes you find a whole lot of them, they'll make nest, combining nest. And then for probably 6 or sometimes 8 frogs together will able to participate on doing that. Which doesn't actually count which baby is which. After these tadpoles are touch the water, they're not recognized anymore. They will take their own life, able to feed on algae around the water. So everyone, I just want to thank you so much for this morning. We're coming at the end of the show for today. Just want to thank you for being part of the show, and follow us every time where we're going. Bring your question. We also thank you for so much for that. And then have a good Christmas until we see you this afternoon again. Goodbye.
Coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good afternoon, everyone. The rain here has finally subsided. It's slightly overcast, but at least we're not wet and soggy for the afternoon. We received a lot of rainfall last night. Big thunderstorms. But anyway, we're here. The sun may pop out, and we're